over here if you're going to be speaking, or if you want to.
Good morning, everyone. It's 9 o'clock. This is a Flagler Board of County Commissioners. We're meeting here in our chambers. If you'd all please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Call the meeting to order. I would just announce that Commissioner Sullivan is not with us today. He's on vacation. As always, we have a moment of silence before we start. And I'd like you to think about how lucky we are to live in the state of Florida. More importantly, to live in Flagler County. And think about our first responders, our sheriff's deputies, our firemen, our EMTs, and all the medical and people here in Flagler County. And last but not least, our men and women in service to our country. Just a moment of silence, please. Thank you. A couple of announcements. Varn Park is closed and will remain closed while we do emergency sand operations out on the beach. It'd be about 3 months that it's going to be closed. We still have some vacancies on our advisory boards. If you're interested, please go to our website, flaglercounty.gov, and see what's available. We have a upcoming regular meeting on Monday, May 15th at 5 p.m. Be our next commission meeting. We've got 3 proclamations this morning. First one's the Motorcycle Safety Awareness Month, and I've asked Commissioner Dance to read that.
Good morning. It's my pleasure to read this proclamation of the Flagler County Board of County Commissioners proclaiming May 2023 as Motorcycle Safety Awareness Month in Flagler County. Whereas motorcycle riding is a popular form of efficient transportation and recreation for more than 1 million people in Florida, and whereas it is important that the drivers of all vehicles be aware of one another and learn to share the road and practice courtesy, and whereas motorcycles provide a means of transportation that uses fewer resources, causes less wear and tear on public roadways, and increases available parking areas. And whereas it is especially important that the citizens of Florida be aware of motorcycles on the street and highways and recognize the importance of motorcycle safety. And whereas the safety hazards created by automobile operators who have not been educated to watch for motorcyclists on the streets and highways of Florida are of prime concern to motorcyclists. And whereas the American Bikers Aim Toward Education of Florida Vintage Chapter, representing Flagler County, the town of Beverly Beach, the town of Hastings, St. Augustine Beach, the city of St. Augustine, the city of Flagler Beach, the city of Bunnell, the city of Palm Coast, and St. Johns County, along with the Florida Blue Knights, Chapter 22, actively promote the safe operation, increased rider training, and increased motorist awareness of motorcycles. And whereas it is important to recognize the need for awareness on the part of all drivers, especially with regard to sharing the road with motorcycles, and to honor motorcyclists' many contributions to the communities in which they live and ride. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the Flagler County Board of County Commissioners that they hereby declare the month of May 2023 as Motorcycle Safety Awareness Month and encourage all residents of Flagler County to be aware of motorcycles on our streets. Adopted this first day of May, attested by Tom Bexley, Clerk of Court, and signed by Chair Greg Hansen.
Thank you, Andy. Do we have representatives of Abate and Florida Blue Knights? Are you all here? Come on up. Come on up. We have 2 copies of that proclamation, one for each of the 2 organizations. So, did you want to speak?
Just a photo op.
Or just a photo op? Well, come on down here. Come on down here.
Come in the center.
You got to be in the center. Pretend like you
Patrick
like
wants
each
to
other.
say something.
Move down. Come on. Come on. Move down a little bit.
Thank you all.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it.
Hey, good to see you, man.
Thank you, man.
Good to see you. Yeah.
A motion to approve the Motorcycle Awareness Safety Proclamation.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the Motorcycle Safety Awareness Month, May 2023. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. Hearing none, the motion passes. Next up, we have the National Correctional Officers and Employees Week, May 7th through 13, 2023. I've asked Ms. Pennington to read that.
This is a proclamation of the Flagler County Board of County Commissioners designating May 7th through 13th, 2023 as National Correctional Officer and Employee Week in Flagler County. Whereas the Flagler County Sheriff's Office detention deputies and professional support staff are correctional employees in Flagler County that form a core element of public safety team in our community. And whereas our detention deputies provide security, supervision, and rehabilitation service for more than 3,000 individual cases in the course of a calendar year, and in recent years, their duties have become increasingly complex and demanding. And whereas in Flagler County, professional detention deputies serve a co-equal role with law enforcement and fire rescue colleagues engaging in dangerous and potentially life-threatening situations on a daily basis. And whereas members of the Flagler County community need to fully recognize and understand the complex, dangerous, and challenging responsibilities carried out by every staff member in the Sheriff Perry Hall Inmate Detention Facility, who are called upon to fill simultaneously custodial, supervisory, counseling, and rehabilitation roles. And whereas every Sheriff Perry Hall Inmate Detention Facility staff member accepts enormous personal and professional responsibility in the performance of their duties in Flagler County. The professionalism, dedication, and courage exhibited by these employees throughout their performance of their demanding roles deserves the utmost respect. And whereas the work of the Sheriff Perry Hall Inmate Detention Facility public safety teams are increasingly recognized and understood as one of the foundations of public safety in Flagler County. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the Flagler County Board of County Commissioners that we proclaim the week, May 7th through 13th, 2023, as National Correctional Officers and Employee Week in Flagler County. We encourage all of our residents to join in recognition and appreciation of the outstanding service our detention deputies and professional support employees provide for safety and welfare of the community. Adopted this 1st of May, 2023, signed by our Clerk of Court and our Chair.
Thank you. Sheriff Staley requested this. I don't see, Commander, you want to come up? Would you like to say a few words?
On behalf of Sheriff Staley, we really are appreciative of the recognition and this proclamation. Sheriff Staley is actually attending a National Commission on Correctional Healthcare conference this week in New Orleans, so I'm sure I'm going to have a lot more to do when he gets back, when he goes to these conferences. But we're very appreciative, and we'll continue to do the good work for the citizens of Flagler County operating the inmate detention facility.
Like a photo?
We'd like a photo.
Yeah, sure. Really appreciate what you guys do.
Mr. Chair, just wanted
Yes.
to say something before we
Sure.
vote on that. You know, we're real fortunate to have Chief Enger.
Yes.
He came from Buffalo, was it, Chief? Up in that area? Yeah. But I mean, he's nationally recognized as a leader in the corrections industry, if you will. So I think we're real fortunate to have him. In leadership here with the Sheriff's Department. And also, I wanted to point out that, it's not just about punishment. The Sheriff does, under the Sheriff's leadership, they do a lot of things at the jail, in terms of counseling and reintegration and trying to, train on basic job skills. So I think that's all important, and that all contributes to, the situation that we have there.
Yeah, I think they have a remarkable recidivism, I can't even say that word, recidivism rate, which means once they leave your facility, they hopefully don't come back. So, and it's because you do a good job there, yeah.
Gentlemen, I'd like to make a motion to approve the proclamation for the National Correctional Officer Employee Week, May 7th through 13th, 2023.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve National Correctional Officers and Employees Week, May 7th through 13th, 2023. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. Hearing none, the motion passes. Next up, we have the National Travel and Tourism Week, May 7th through 13th, 2023. I've asked Commissioner O'Brien to read that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is a proclamation of the Flagler County Board of County Commissioners designating the week of May the 7th through the 13th, 2023 as National Travel and Tourism Week in Flagler County. Whereas the travel industry fuels every industry and will continue to be an essential part of Flagler County's economy, quality of life, and workforce. And whereas travel is an economic powerhouse for every state and destination across the country, with an economic output of $2.6 trillion in 2022, supporting 14.5 million American jobs. And whereas hospitality and tourism are Florida's #1 industry, the economic engine of our state, a top employer, and a source of revenue that benefits communities across Florida. And whereas tourism puts more than 1 million Floridians to work in hotels, restaurants, attractions, and other tourism-reliant businesses, and whereas in 2022, out-of-state visitors spent an estimated $122.9 billion to Florida's economy, which is more than the entire GDP of 13 states. And whereas travel and tourism significantly affect the economy of Flagler County, supporting nearly 20% of total jobs, generating over $413 million in local gross sales tax and $600 million in direct spending in local accommodations, restaurants, and attractions. And whereas in fiscal year 2022, local sales and accommodations saw a 23% increase, bringing in over $4.4 million in bed tax revenue. And whereas travel is an essential industry and we must continue to communicate that growing travel leads to economic growth, benefits businesses, and fosters mutual understanding. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the Flagler County Board of County Commissioners to proclaim May the 7th through the 13th, 2023 as National Travel and Tourism Week in Flagler County, and urge the citizens to join us in recognizing the critical role and significant contributions that tourism brings to Flagler County. Adopted this first day of May 2023, attested by Tom Bexley, Clerk of the Court, and signed by Chair Greg Hansen.
Thank you, Don. Amy, did you want to come up? Oh, we got the whole crew here.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. Amy Lukasik, Director of Tourism. I would be remiss if I did not make sure all of our staff joined us here today, and I'd like to introduce them. We have Courtney Brokaw, she's our Marketing Media Manager. We have Deborah Naughton, she's our Destination Development and Community Engagement. James Fisk is our Visitor Services. Candy Breckenridge, she's our Marketing Media Manager, and Christina Hutzel is our Administrative Assistant. So we'd like to thank you for your support. And this week, as we honor and thank the tourism and hospitality industry, as always, we do ask that you give those workers an extra thank you for their service. Thank you for showing up to work. If you can, leave a little extra tip this week. And they're a very important part of our economy. And thank you for this proclamation.
Thank you.
You all.
Want to come on up? Yep. That away.
It's right in your face.
You got it? It's up here. You know, I was working on another project over the weekend, but a couple numbers came to mind that I'll share with everybody. The vacation rentals in the unincorporated part of Flagler County is over 650. And if you count Flagler Beach and Beverly Beach, it's another 150. So there's over 800 rentals in our county on our beach. That's a lot. That's where all that $4 million comes from for bed tax, because those stay rented quite a bit.
Chair, make a motion to approve the proclamation.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the proclamation of National Travel and Tourism Week, May 7th through 13th, 2023. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed say nay. Hearing none, the motion passes. We have three presentations this morning. The first one is Transparency and Strategic Plan Dashboard Update. Ms. Petito or Jorge?
We actually have Mr. Salinas giving you a presentation on
Okay.
this.
All right.
Thought you had a technology background.
Just a little bit.
Hewlett Packard or somebody like that, I can't remember.
Good morning, Commissioners. I want to start by giving a brief introduction of what we're going to be presenting today. And the first part is, back in October of 2022, the Board of County Commissioners approved our strategic plan. One of the items or value commitment within the strategic plan is putting Flagler first. And first stands for physical accountability, innovative solutions, responsible growth, superior services, and T for transparent government. And that's the portion that we're going to be focusing today. Within our strategic plan, we have four focus areas. One is the one that I'll be focusing right now. I'll talk about all the focus areas, but the one is economic vitality, which has a measure. It's economic, EG 3.5.1. The county will create a dashboard to engage and inform the citizens on progress of established goals. And as we look at there's multiple dashboards I'll be covering today. The first one will be the strategic plan dashboard. And that one, we have, just for the legend itself, a green arrow means that that particular measure has meet or exceeded what the target was. Yellow means there's caution, there might be, we have to monitor it. Red is that it's below target, and a blue dot means that the information needs to be evaluated. There's no sufficient information to continue or to provide an update on that one. So this is the Flagler County first transparency dashboard. It has 9 different cards. There's some information here about the dashboard, and there's an email in case any of the residents have any questions they want to forward to us or need additional information. The first part here of the strategic dashboard is based on the strategic plan. So the strategic dashboard, on the top you see here, it talks about our mission as a county. And then we have the 4 focus areas that are part of the strategic dashboard: effective government, economic vitality, growth and infrastructure, and public health. So all the measures and goals that were required to be worked on during this fiscal year are represented in the dashboard, and we'll continue to update it on a quarterly basis and add and remove ones that have been completed or add ones that need to be incorporated and evaluated for this particular cycle. So as you can see, we have red, green, and yellow. This is the first time we're presenting you this dashboard, and we'll continue to work on some of these. This one here is the one I just talked about. The county will create this dashboard. So just to give you an example how to navigate this, this is the goal: provide an excellent customer experience. And then we have the measure, which is creating the dashboard for this particular measure. So once you click on it, it gives you the progress thus far, and the analysis piece of it is for the update for this last quarter and why this is important, and in case we have any particular link to further explain what this dashboard is about. So we have, this one is related to the operating reserves. As you have all been concerned with the operating reserve and how we've been spending some of those dollars. So we created, we're expanding on this particular dashboard. This one is just a measure of time of this particular item. And you can see the analysis piece talks about the 5%, which is 5% is what's required for the operating reserves. And that equates in the FY23 budget to $5,609,769. We've created 2 additional dashboards specifically for this, so you have access and you can share with the residents. So each focus area has their own set of measures, and you can all access these at your own time. I wanted to go back and click on the second card, which is the strategic plan itself. It's available throughout the website, but we wanted to make sure there was in one location where everybody can access it easily instead of digging or looking through it through multiple links in the website. This one here, the operating reserve, is one that you as commissioners ask, what is the level, how much we have in our operating reserves. So we created a dashboard to expand upon that particular item. So this is the operating reserves dashboard. It has the date of when you approve a particular item to transfer or move out some dollars to fund a particular item in the dashboard. This is the item within the agenda that actually covers that particular information. And this is a description of that item that funded that. So in this particular case, as you can see, that for FY23, the operating reserves needed to be $5,606,000. The first transaction was a deduction of $72,656 for the Hurricane Matthew closeout. So that brought it down, and each item will keep adding, and then you can see that at the end of this cycle, or when we just took the snapshot of this particular dashboard, we are $1.2 million below where we need to be for the operating reserves. The remaining balance is here, $4.3 million. The next one is the 212s, which is for emergency, and being a coastal community, we need to maintain between 212s and 312s of operating reserves. This next item, for FY23, we need to have $18.025 million. Each item that's been, as in the previous one, been approved by the board, the date, the item that was approved, and what particular description for that item either moved up or moved down that reserve. So the first entry was a cash carry forward at the beginning of the year of $527,000. That moved our $18,025,000 up to $18,553,000. And then we have a few items that actually deducted from the 212 reserve. Some of these are loans, and we're expecting these to come back as we receive reimbursement for these projects. So out of these items that we have here, we have a $5 million loan, a $2 million loan, and another $2 million loan. That we're expecting those $9 million to come back and replenish these 212 reserve. The next one is the Florida scorecard. This is a metric or a dashboard that is provided by the Florida Chamber of Commerce. And I know that Greg from the Chamber of Commerce has used part of these, but it has a lot of information by county that most people don't know about. So we're incorporating that as well. And you can see it has business startup, GDP per capita, income migration. And on the top, you have multiple different items related to the scorecard collected by the Chamber of Commerce that are just specifically to Flagler County. This next card is a monthly BOCC update that Heidi and the rest of the directors have been putting together and sharing with the commissioners. It provides a lot of metrics and work that is going on in different departments. This one has the latest pictures from the Bring Your Child to Work Day, and it was a successful event where the children or the kids that came over were able not only to be and participate and see where the parents work, but also see other functions within the county and how those operate, and perhaps inspire them to join us in the future. But this collects, or each department director shares a lot of the work that they do throughout the year. And this is done on a month-to-month basis, so we collect those. Rose puts them together once she receives those from all the department directors, and provides this information so the community can see all the work that is going on within the county. There's a lot of different events or work that is going on. You can see here that Flagler, fire rescue, the fire structure, vehicle, and wildland operations for the month. So all of these, this pink is the 2023 one, and as you can see, month over month, the different areas have been going up. The second one is emergency medical services. For 2023, we have in March, and then as you can see, they're all heading up in terms of demand for services. Next one is emergency management, the training they've conducted, how many outreach events they've held, how many radio interviews they provided. On the right side, you have information related to the Flagler Executive Airport, the arrivals and departures in comparison to prior years. Some of the information related to the construction and events that are taking place at the airport. The amount of gas they've sold as Jet A or F gas. We have on the left side financial services grant tracking. The county is currently tracking over 70 grants, a total of $120 million. We've been reimbursed $61 million out of that 120 that we're tracking. On the right side, you have for the month of March, general services. In this transportation division within general services, how many trips they conducted or delivered during the month of March, how many miles they drove during the month of March, how many active customers they have. The next section is road and bridges, how many acres they've mowed in the month, how many miles they've improved. Parks. On the communication side, the different news releases and posting. On growth management, we have the new planning and zoning applications that have come in by month. All the permits have been issued, and then compare them to the prior years. Permit applications. On the engineering side, project updates in terms of the different projects that Faith and her team are managing. On the health and human services side, the different events, how many folks we have enrolled in adult daycare, how many meals were served during the month of March for the adult daycare. The senior services, 320 congregate meals were served. 2,275 meals on wheels were delivered during the month of March. And then we have economic development, the different events in terms of unemployment rate, single-family medium sales price. We have on the IT side some of the projects that Matt and his team are managing, how many tickets they processed in the month of March. Human resources, the turnover rate, which is 8.47. We currently have 426 authorized positions. We have 371 total employees. We have 55 vacancies, and these are some of the vacancies by department. So that's the monthly update, and that comes every month, and I'll be posted on this particular dashboard for you to share with your residents, because there is a lot of work that is going on throughout the county. And one thing that we probably failed is telling our story. This will help us be able to share our story and what goes on within the county. The next one is the annual report. Heidi presented this to the Board of County Commissioners. This is the information that talks about all the accomplishments and summarize all the accomplishments and looking forward in terms of what we've done as a county. This next card is a budget in brief, which provides a high-level 2-page document of a very complex budget, but summarized in a very digestible way. It talks about the total budget, how much is general fund, the millage, the taxable, gross taxable value increase for the last, for FY23, our credit rating, and then the breakdown of homeowners' tax bill by how they are getting taxed, and then a graph here of the reserves and some of the use of the funds. And then the last one is, this is a particular dashboard that was developed by our GIS division. They work with the property appraiser to come up with this detailed information. What this is actually like a unofficial tax receipt that lets you, as a resident, know where your tax dollars that you pay to the county, not to a particular municipality, but to the county, and how the Board of County Commissioners are using those dollars once you approve the budget. So for example, here you can enter an address or a parcel. Instead of selecting a residential one, I'm just gonna select a commercial one, so there's no particular person. So this particular parcel is Wawa on State Road 100. So they paid $16,736 in county taxes. So if you want to know or get a tax receipt how the county spent those dollars, the majority of the dollars go to public safety. The first piece is law enforcement. Out of that $16,000, $5,679 went to law enforcement. $2,562 went to fire services. $1,124 to health and human services, facilities management, the tax collector, which is fee-based. That's how much out of that particular tax bill went to the tax collector, property appraiser, clerk of circuit court and controller, IT, library services, financial services, and it goes down the list. I want to pick another one.
Can I make a point? I'm assuming that's a commercial parcel, correct?
Right.
Wawa.
Yeah, so that makes our case about why we need commercial development and diversify the tax base, because there's no way that that parcel is going to consume those kinds of services. Whereas if that, if it was a residential parcel, whole different story. You would need several, obviously, residential parcels to make.
To generate that amount of tax revenues. This next one is McDonald's on State Road 100. They paid county taxes $8,536. With those, they supported law enforcement at a rate of $2,896, fire services at $1,307, and the list goes on from there. Parks and Recreation, $258, IT, $165, Library, $125. And you can see that that amount of taxes they're paying, or a particular resident pay, it breaks it down, how much goes to law enforcement, how much goes to fire, how much goes to parks, how much goes to library. And that gives them a good feel in terms of how much they're supporting each of these different services within the county. And then here on this side, we have a graph that actually displays the percentage of the revenues that come in for the particular county taxes. How are they distributed? These are all services, fire, services. So this is available right now. We're going to have this link included within the Board of County Commissioners section. It will be there as a transparency line item. It will be also included in the administration section as a transparency. But you can also just type Flagler county.gov/data, and it will take you directly to this page, which is our transparency dashboard. Any questions?
And some, without having gone through it and looking at all the stuff, I'm appreciative of the part on reserves. I think that paints a clearer picture for us and for the residents, and also what you just went through on the tax dashboard and being able to customize that. Again, I think it's a pretty powerful statement. So, and very effective means of communicating the work of the commission and county government, where the money goes. So this is good stuff. Thank you.
Yeah, I greatly appreciated the reserve issue because I now understand it. So that's good. That was really good. Appreciate that.
It'll be available anytime that you have questions or you want to see where are the reserves at a particular time, just come here and we'll update it as we continue to get items that get approved. It'll always be there, so you can always click on it and get the latest one and go to a particular item. I just wanted to say thank you to the Board of County Commissioners for trusting us to work on this and build this first Flagler County Transparency Dashboard. Heidi Petito, our County Administrator, for providing the guidance and support to keeping us focused on these important goals. All directors that work providing data and keeping the departments moving forward. Carlos Hernandez, he built that intro page that you saw for our dashboard. Tyler Phillips and Wayne Whitley from GIS, with some folks from the property appraisal, were able to build this. Where does your county taxes go? There is actually a commercial application that when I was in Oregon we used, and I sat down with these folks from GIS, and they were able to develop this in-house at no cost, additional cost to the taxpayers. And then the last one is Marissa Salus. She is from ClearPoint, the first dashboard for the strategic plan. She and I worked many hours trying to get all these strategic plan items into a dashboard that is able visually be able to consume by the residents. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Jorge.
you.
Any other questions or comments? All right, great. Thank you. Next presentation is from the Army Corps of Engineers update. Faith?
Good morning, Faith Al-Khatib, County Engineer.
Fresh off of your radio show work on Friday.
Thank you. I'm here today, I and Jason from the Corps of Engineers, to update you on Flagler County Beach Management Plan and on the current projects. And of course, Jason, he will go over much more details, information related to the Corps of Engineer project status. As you know, maybe I need to take my glasses out. A comprehensive study was initiated by the Corps of Engineers, started 2003, and we did request the Corps of Engineers to do that study then for the 18-mile of Flagler County coastline. In 2014, the Corps of Engineers study determined only 2.6 miles within the city of Flagler beach area does meet the criteria for the coastal storm risk management beach and dune renourishment project. So, with that said, due to the continued annual erosion and also the impacts of these hurricanes, 2016 we have Matthews, then 17 Irma, 19 Dorian, and that's when Flagler County, they decided also they need to come up with some repair projects needed to protect our residents and our structures. 2018, we did work with FGT. We received $17 million grant funding to come in, use part of that funding, $6.5 million, to be as a local match for the Corps of Engineer project, and also $11 million to come in, design and permit a dredging project within the city of Flagler beach limit, north and south of the Corps of Engineer at that time. Also in 2018, after Matthews, everybody familiar how bad was our coastline. At that time also, our residents did not have any protections. And our infrastructure, we did not have any infrastructure at that time. We did work with DEP, with FEMA, and we did one major emergency project at that time. It was designed and permitted, and we did restore our dunes for approximately 11.4 miles of Flagler County coastline. Doing that, it opened the door for us to have an engineered beach and also publicly maintained. And it will give us the opportunity to apply for FEMA to receive CAT-EG funding. So that project was really very important and critical to us. Again, it was a small project, approximately $17 million. DEP funding, we have to match it locally, 50%. Flagler County, they use some of the TDC funding, match DEP funding, and also the homeowner association, some of them privately, they participate, and they include some of their private funding towards this project. In 2019, Flagler County Board, they did take an action. It's time for us to do a beach management plan, and based on that, we initiated the beach management study. The beach management study, we amended our contract with Olson Associated, and they started that work in 2021. 2022, last year in August, we came here, we presented the beach management study to you, and in that beach management study, the engineering firm, they recommended 6 different alternatives. Basically, these alternatives, it's up to my board what they want to pick, which plan. As you remember, we have an existing plan, but that existing plan only to restore the dunes within the City Flagler Beach area. At that time, there was 44 cubic yards per foot to build the dunes there. That's for the Corps of Engineer project, and for our project, it was a smaller template than the 44. With that said, until now, Jason, he will go over some of that density of the sand. At this time, we are looking into 90 cubic yards per foot after 3-4 years of implementing that plan then. Again, I will go back to our alternatives for the 11.4 miles. Basically, in the 11.4 miles, we have to decide, do we want to do a dredging operation or keep doing trucking? Trucking, it will be good for emergency project and for just dumping emergency sand for protection. But for a long-term plan to protect and to restore our dunes and beaches, we need to do a dredging operation. And my understanding, all my board, they are agreeing on that approach. With that said, they did not only include these 6 alternatives, but also we did recommend in that beach study to do 11 tasks to expedite defining our plan and to help you say, okay, this is how we want to proceed. First issue, us as a county, do we want to take the lead or do we want to create some kind of district to take the lead, taking care of Flagler County coastline? Also, as you know, we have almost 6 miles within the City Flagler Beach. Does the City Flagler Beach, they want to take the lead to come up with their plan and to keep maintaining their beaches and dunes? This is something we need to keep talking about it and finalize it. Then everybody know about it. Funding resources. We have been doing a great job so far reacting, going to DEP requesting funding, going to DEP requesting funding for emergency situations, or maybe also for certain projects from FEMA, FDOT, which nobody ever thought FDOT as a transportation department to share with us the funding and the grant to build our dunes. But you know, there is common goal between us and them to protect A1A and for us and for the City Flagler Beach also to restore their dunes. We talked about also initiating another study with the Corps of Engineers. And yes, commissioners, this year in January, you did send a letter to the Corps of Engineers requesting the Corps of Engineers to initiate that study. As you know, typical, this kind of study, it will cost $3 million. $1.5 million is supposed to be local funding. $1.5 million comes from the federal. When commissioners, they send the letter requesting this study, we did ask them for a waiver to be the total cost of this study, the Corps of Engineers to come up with this funding. Until now, we did not receive any funding towards this project, and usually it will take 3 years to conduct this study. Also, we, as you know, for the Corps of Engineers and FGT project, we did identify a sand source. It's 11 miles offshore. We talked with you commissioners, you did approve to come and do a geotech survey there to expand that location and to be ready when we have enough funding to move on with a long-term project for the 11.4 miles. We will have a location of the sand, and we do have the quantities. Easements, everybody know. Easement is really very important to Flagler County. Why is it very important? Most of our coastline is privately owned. We need to come up with a way to have the permission from the community to come in, get the grant, and start to restore their dunes and their beaches to protect them, to protect their properties, and of course, our residents. Oh, so now, I don't know if I need to go over this again, which I mentioned, the step which has been recommended by our consulting, the things we need to do. As I mentioned to you, we started doing some of these projects. Now, looking at the geotechnical data, you approved the work order September 7th. It's in progress. The funding study, we did divided this phase to 2 phases. Phase number 1 to do public education, get the public input, do a survey, see what Flagler County residents want us to do. And we started this project, this task, and it's ongoing at this time. Requesting a study from the Corps of Engineers, even if any of our dunes will meet Corps of Engineers criteria, we have to come up with a match. And usually the percentage of that match, it depends on the Flagler County public access and parking. To do this kind of survey for existing public access and parking within Flagler County coastline, it will help us to identify the percentage of the local match and also maybe a potential for the future to get more public access to reduce the local match for these kind of projects. We talked about the funding analysis and we talked about the easements. I understand we have the best county attorney in the state of Florida, Mr. Hadid. I know he's starting the project. We cannot do anything and move forward without having these easements. Now, this is a map to show you what kind of projects the engineering departments are working on just for the coastline of Flagler County. As you can see, the first one, Dorian FEMA CAT-G, then Benter's Hills. This is the project is ongoing. We're having, again, in the process, pending approval of FEMA. We're going to be having emergency sand to allocate in some of these locations. Then the Hammock Dune restoration project also scheduled. It's only eligible for DEP funding, the $5 million. And of course, the last 2 projects in the south within the city of Flagler Beach. And soon we'll share with you what's our final plan, how we want to combine these 2 projects to 1 project. Commissioners, this slide shows you at this time, we have at least $80 million available for us to restore our dunes. The last 3 months, the engineering departments, including you, and we thank our elected officials, governor, everybody, House Speaker, DEP, Secretary of DEP, FEMA, everybody who came in and helped us to get us to this point. The engineering departments, Ansley, Hamid, Amy, Richard, Walden, Gracie, for the last 3 months, at least they did work with all these grant agencies, and at least at this time, we have $50 million to come in and do emergency project within Flagler County coastline. The first project, I'm not going to be boring you, going over much more details. You are familiar with Dorian FEMA project. This project has been completed. We really have a great contractor out there. It took them 1 month to restore, to rebuild the dunes there. It was for 1.5 miles from Malacambra all the way to south of Washington State Park. And again, was FEMA funding, and this project has been completed. This is some of the project. This is some of the photos. It will show you before and after we did our project within Marineland area. Here, Washington State Park, probably all of you know, no dunes left within that area. A lot of flooding happened within their park, and we have one drainage basin. It will impact Flagler County residents. So we did work with them. We requested them to provide us with some funding, which is approximately $1.8 million, and we did restore the dunes for their area, and this project has been completed too. I'm not going to go over the specific schedule, but the contractor has been in and out as quick as possible. This is a video. I know Ansley and Hamid, they included it. Carlos, I need your help. This is just to show you. You can tell where they built the dunes, and the dunes width here varies, and where in some areas there is no protection. I really appreciate Bruno from the GIS. He was flying the drone to help us inspect and document the status of these beaches and dunes within our area. As you know, it's a dynamic system. Today, we dump some sand. Tomorrow, some of it will erode it will go away. We have no option but to provide a protection for our residents. So we have to do it. All the funding I mentioned, I talked about, we brought it to Flagler County. It is only eligible for these kind of activities if a Flagler County, they don't work hard and get that money and bring it to protect our residents. Other communities, they can take it and use it and help the residents in that area. And if you have any questions, I can stop and answer any of your questions, commissioners. Now, as you know, our contractor mobilized to Varn Park to build Benter's Hills project, and they have a lot of challenges there. And again, this is DEP funding. It's only for protection, 50,000 cubic yards to restore our dunes in that area. At this time, we think he might be done by the end of this month, but they are facing a lot of challenges. I think all of us, we do know with the weather, what's happening out there, it's impacting the project schedule, but we're trying to get it done and move forward to start dumping some sand just north of Varn Park. The challenges right now the contractor is facing doing this project, high tides. We barely have any dry sand in that area, time of the year. Also, as you can see, a lot of homes, they don't have any protections. It's very close to the foundation of these houses, so they have to be careful with their plan. You can see some of the residents out there, they did locate or install some temporary retaining wall there, so we have to be careful what we're doing there. And you can see there are some dune walkovers there, very unstable and not in good condition. So we cannot be liable and responsible for these private dune walkovers. So we have to work around them, and that will create some delay on the contractor schedule. This is another photo show you how bad is it with the vegetation. By rules, it is emergency sand. We don't have a design and permit, but still we have guidelines. We have to follow the EP guidelines. We cannot cover any of these vegetations during the project. Again, another photo to show you some of the conditions out there. Probably you heard 30 people or 30 residents within that area. They applied to build a seawall. They received the permit to go ahead and start construction there. Flagler County, we have been working with them, helping them to coordinate with DEP, coordinate with their design team to help them move forward with Fish and Wild. We got them an emergency order from DEP to move these permits as soon as possible. And by the way, DEP, they did an amazing job working with us to get us where we are at this time. After we're done with Painter's Hills project, we're going to be going north. That's our plan at this time, which it will be for the Hammock Dune project, approximately 1.5 miles. This area only eligible for some funding from DEP. At this time, that's our plan, that's our goal, to start there sometime in June. It might be changed. The only outstanding issue I need from them, construction easement. We cannot mobilize there and be in their private areas without having construction easement. We started the coordination with our maintenance team, the things they need to work on and get it ready for us when we start mobilizing, doing this project there. As I mentioned, they are not eligible for Cat G FEMA or Cat B, that's just for the $5 million DEP funding. Now we're talking about FEMA emergency sand. We call it Cat B. We have 4.9 miles of Flagler County coastline are eligible for this kind of funding. We submitted our report. We hired also an associate, created a report. We have been coordinating with FEMA. I think we are getting closer to get this funding approved. I believe it's going to be approximately $12 million. And there is 2 reaches here we included. I'm not going to be boring you with the exact locations, but that's our upcoming plan. Also, we did apply to FEMA to do Cat G. And to do Cat G, we considered the cost estimate to do a dredging operation. Our goal to combine DEP funding plus FEMA Cat G funding, and hopefully we can allocate some local funding to maximize all these funding to do a dredging operation. I feel, and I think all of you agree with me, it's time to come in. Our plan should be dredging, not trucking. Trucking should be only for emergency basis. It's very expensive. We are paying between $65 to $70 per cubic yard. If it's a dredging, it might be the cost $22 per cubic yard. And when it comes to FEMA, we have to pay some local match. And the local match, it has to be 12.5%. DEP, as you know, commissioners, we did work with DEP staff. We did waive the local match. But FEMA is still, we have to use a 12.5% local funding, but still we are working with DEP. We might use some of DEP funding to be used for to offset our local match. Here, as I mentioned, after Yanni call, you commissioners, you did a great job helping us obtaining $17 million from the special legislature session, which was in December. I believe, I'm really very optimistic. Right now, it's in the governor budget. We might get up to $17 million. I don't know, we'll know probably next month, but that will be really great coming to Flagler County. And these kind of fundings with FEMA Cat G funding, as I mentioned, our goal to combine it and do a dredging project operation and a full template as much as we can afford for Flagler County coastline. I'm going to be skipping this slide, and this will conclude my presentation to you now. I might come back to that slide after Jason concluded his presentation. With that said, I would like to invite Jason to come in and update you much more details about the Corps of Engineers. We have been working on it recently, and I think soon we'll be in construction sometime next year, May, right? Yep. May 2024.
Thank you, Faith. All right. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, commissioners, other officials in the room. I'm Jason Hara, Senior Project Manager in the Jacksonville District Corps of Engineers. First, I want to discuss what Faith was mentioning about the new study. We did receive that letter, and that study would go from the existing federal project from 7th Street South to 28th Street South, and would look at all areas that are currently not part of the Corps of Engineers projects. The work that's being done by FEMA or the small truck haul projects don't affect that. We consider that kind of one-time kind of Band-Aid approaches. So that doesn't impact the opportunity for a new study. I will tell you, and Mr. Hanson, as you're very well familiar, you're competing with a lot of different projects throughout the United States. The Assistant Secretary of the Army at the Pentagon gets about this many requests each year, and the budget is about that much each year for new studies. So it's in your best interest to continue to push that with your elected officials to try to get yours moved up the list, obviously. So I'm here to support you in anything I can do for that. Trying to use the clicker. What am I doing wrong? Okay. Battery die? No. All right, great. Faith kind of alluded to this. I won't spend too much time on it. The original study started back in 2002, and then we got each one of our Corps of Engineers feasibility studies completes with the signing of a Chief of Engineers report, whoever the three-star general is that leads the Corps in 3-year tenures. So in 2014, the three-star general signed the Chief of Engineers report, which was about a 2.6-mile project in Flagler Beach. The really interesting thing that you'll see at the bottom of this is the cubic yard of sand that we anticipated needing to replace that beach back in 2014 was 330,000 cubic yards. That's what was authorized by Congress. 2016, we received that authorization. That was in a Water Resource Development Act. That's what all the Corps of Engineers projects get authorized in. It's called WARDA. That was in 2016. We had Hurricane Matthew, everybody's very familiar with, that immediately followed that authorization, but we did not receive congressional funding to initiate construction until February of 2018. Following that congressional authorization, we sent the county a letter requesting the perpetual easements. The Corps of Engineers has to have all of the perpetual easements to construct a federal project. Mr. Hadid and his staff worked very diligently to get all of those. There was certainly some challenges, but we did not receive those. We have those now. Mr. Hadid can get into more detail if you would like. But what I want to explain is you can see from 2014, 330,000 cubic yards. We had Ian and Nicole that hit us in 2022. And here we are today, based on our recent survey of about 1.3 million cubic yards. So we've seen a 1 million cubic yard increase of the sand needed to fill the project from 2014 to 2024. And you can see there's been Matthew, Ian, and Nicole that's happened during that time. Key points for some of the new commissioners. Every Corps of Engineers project has a non-federal sponsor, that is Flagler County. The initial construction of the project hopefully will be in the spring of 2023 till February 2024. That's a little bit outdated. That was our previous schedule that we were looking at. I'll show you the updated schedule in a minute. Our projects, the beauty of our projects, once you complete initial construction, you're in the federal program for 50 years, okay? And so we build in regular renourishments, we call them, and we anticipated back in when this project was authorized that every 11 years we would come in and put more sand on the beach. Clearly the erosion is a lot worse now than it was when we were doing this report back in 2014, but we have those baked in where every 11 years we're coming back with a regular renourishment. Once you complete initial construction of the project next spring, then if there's a named storm that is declared under the Stafford Act by the president, any of those future renourishments are 100% federal. Okay, we build back the same template. We do all the monitoring required. It's 100% federal. And if you get hit with 2 or 3 storms a year, that's 100% federal, 100% federal, 100% federal. We've had that in Duval County and St. John's where we've had to do multiple, but it's 100% federal. Project cost share is 65 fed, not 35 non-fed for initial. And then based on our policies, the renourishments that you see in 2035, 2046, 2057, 2068, that would be the every 11-year cycle. Those will be done at 50-50. I mentioned that it's 100% federal for Stafford Act declared storms. And then the key point here is once we leave construction of the project, it's on the county working with the city of Flagler Beach to maintain that project until the next renourishment. That includes checking the signs, checking the vegetation. If there's scarps that come, bringing in a small four-wheeler with a screen on the back, knocking those scarps down, and actively maintaining that beach until we come back. Project design, our dune height is about 19 feet NAVD, so it's going to match pretty much where A1A is. It's not going to be above A1A. The width of that dune, 20 to 40 feet, it will vary based on the topography. We'll have a slope down, then we'll have about a 40 to 60 foot wide berm. And in most places, that berm is going to be about 60 feet. What is the berm? That's the towel space. That's where everybody sits their chairs, enjoys the beach. But then from that, it will go out for a grand total of about 110 feet of berm. Okay, some of that is underwater as well. So that's a really robust project. Our field density for engineers in the room is right at 90 cubic yards a foot. Faith, I don't know, some of your projects are 40, 50, or 40. So the reason I'm bringing that up is the smaller Band-Aid projects work, but these projects are very, very robust. They're much bigger projects, and we build so much fill to try to get that 7, 8, 9 years down the road, do we have to come back? 6? Okay. So 6 for the emergency, about 90 cubic yards a foot fill density for the federal projects. Dune walkovers is always a big point. We identified about, I think, 7 walkovers in the federal project that, after Ian and Nicole, need to have action taken by the city of Flagler Beach. I know they're actively working those. I think about 2 or 3 of those are public and the rest are private. But it's the same point that Faith was making. Contractors that get the award of these contracts, if they see one that they can take their finger and knock it over, they're not going to get close to it. And the last thing we don't want areas underneath these walkovers where water can get in and start eroding back to A1A and have the same problem we had. We have to fill in underneath these to the stair level to avoid any kind of water penetration. So the city is actively working to take care of those. We need those either repaired or torn out before the contractor shows up. This is the project area here that we have. We're dealing with some interesting complexities now as far as, and I'll go into that in a minute, but most people know the federal project goes from R80, which is the DEP Range Monument, which is near 7th Street South, and I'll show you in the next slide, it goes all the way down to 28th Street South. You see on the north part there, that was our construction access area right near Highway 100. Our plan was that the contractor would just utilize that to do field crew changes. They change crews every 12 hours. They would drive a pickup truck down, drive to the pier, offload people to get on the equipment and continue the work. As most of you know, that access point now is about an 8 to 10 foot vertical drop, right? It's no longer easily accessible, so it's got to be built up to even be able to be used. The project goes, as I said, from R80 and goes south. On number 1, you see what a hopper dredge is, and I know Mr. Hanson and others, you guys have been briefed on this, but a hopper dredge is essentially a ship with a giant vacuum cleaner. It will suck the sand off the bottom, as you can see. I don't think that works. Yeah, it does. You can see the intake screens here at the bottom of the hopper dredge. It essentially sucks sand up into the belly of the ship. It will go to it's about 1,500 to 2,000 feet offshore, connect to a pipe, pump that sand onto the beach where there'll be 3 to 4 bulldozers that will move that sand up and down the beach to the contours that we elect. On the south part of the project, this is where it gets more interesting. We had a staging and access area, and keep in mind, the sponsors for every federal project are required to provide the lands, the staging, and the access. It's that way across the United States. Flagler County found us a small sliver here near the water tower that was going to be used not only to stage equipment, but to access the beach. The equipment that's brought in, several D9, D7 dozers, thousands of feet of metal pipe. So it was going to be tough to begin with. Our plan was that we were going to stage everything there, and we were going to traverse up through Gamble Rogers to the end of our project, or the southern tip of our project at 28th Street. That was the plan all along. Now, at extremely low tide, you have 3 or 4 feet of water hitting the edge of the dune. So no Caterpillar dealer is going to rent 4 or 5 D9 dozers to a contractor to be full of salt water coming up and down every day. So plus, there's about a 10-foot vertical drop there that wasn't there before. Made it extremely challenging. So we gave Faith several options that you'll see in a minute. We had our construction team come down and look at this. Essentially, what we have to do is we're going to have to build our way into the southern part of our project. We're going to have to build a beach, build a ramp, bring in about 10,000 cubic yards of fill from an upland source build that 10-foot vertical ramp, then be able to get the equipment to the beach, and then we have to build our way up to fight off the tides coming in and out. So it's became a much more challenging project than we anticipated back in 2014. So with that said, Faith asked us to provide them a list of options if we had to do the worst-case scenario, which is starting all the way at the water tower, working our way up. But we also, in coordination with Faith, found a couple other options that I know they are pursuing. The blue portion here, as I mentioned, from 7th Street to 28th Street South is the federal project. That's the 6535 portion. Starting in the south, we provided 3 options, green, red, and purple. Okay, the purple is going all the way to that water tower staging area and putting in sand and moving our way up. Okay, the red is going past just an HOA, Pebble Beach HOA, would be going just past their property into Gamble Rogers to provide them a more robust berm and dune in front of their property if they elect to give us their property for a temporary staging area, an access area. The green would be going just to the edge of their HOA property, which doesn't give them as much sand and dune as the red does. So the purple, worst case scenario, we can't get the HOA staging area, we gotta start at Gamble, work our way up. Red provides a lot of protection for the HOA in conjunction with them providing a staging and access area for their property. The green goes right to their edge of their property, gives them some sand, not an extreme amount. On the north end in yellow, Faith has been working with DOT to extend our federal project from where the blue you see is all the way up to about 7th Street North, okay? The more sand we get out here, the better. It's going to make the federal project last longer. So I know Faith is coordinating with DOT to see if they're willing to do that. Again, everything in yellow, everything in green, red, or purple is 100% non-federal. This is additional work outside of the blue area that would be on the county working with DEP or the DOT to fund. As you can see in the table, the federal project's about 14,000 feet. The total cost $32 million, estimated now for the 1.3 million cubic yards of sand. 6535, that's 21 million fed, roughly 11.3 million non-fed. The yellow, I won't go through all these scenarios. I think the most likely scenario based on last week's information discussion with Faith is the middle, which is building the northern extension at 100% non-federal, building the blue at 6535, and then doing the red southern extension, going into Gamble just a little bit, giving the Pebble Beach HOA a significant amount of sand and dune in front of their property. If we're able to do that, and if Mr. Hadid and others are able to secure those easements, that would be a $36.6 million project, 20 million fed, and roughly 16.8 non-fed. To do this, all the area in yellow has to have temporary construction easements, okay? So Mr. Hadid has to get temporary construction easements from all those properties in yellow and everywhere from the edge of the blue at R94 all the way through the red. So that's a land use agreement with Gamble Rogers and all those temporary construction easements that are outside of the federal project on the south and on the north. Initial construction, this schedule keeps pushing to the right. I'm hoping, knock on wood, this is the last time we can get these easements secured. Faith can work with DOT and DEP and others to get all the funding set up so that we can move forward. Right now, we are doing a little bit of work, but I'm waiting for a final decision from the county if they're able to secure the funding from the north and they want to do the yellow area, thumbs up for that. And if they're able to negotiate and come to an agreement with the Pebble Beach HOA to secure that for staging and access. I need both of those completed before I can really finalize this schedule and put it in front of you. I think this schedule is strong. Right now, we have to do a lot of additional work. Since we've had so much erosion, we have to go back to DEP for another permit. We have to go back to the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management to request more sand from the Barrow area. And we have to do another National Environmental Policy Act or NEPA document. We told the public it was 300,000 cubic yards. Now we're saying 1.3 million cubic yards. Most of the public says, great, where's the sand put on the beach? According to federal law, you have to notify the public you're taking more sand from an offshore Barrow area, putting it on the beach. All that has to be done to complete the plans and specs in December 2023, award the contract in March of 2024. The contractor would start work most likely in May 2024. with a completion in January 2025, weather pending. That's all I have, subject to your questions.
Thank you, Jason. That was very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. As Jason mentioned, we have been working closely with the Corps of Engineers, with FDOT, DEP, and the City of Flagler Beach about which approach is the best alternative for everybody. And I believe it is the one up to the red area there. The total cost of this project, as you can see, $36 million at least. The local match is going to be $16.7 million. With that said, coordinating with FDOT for the last 3 months, they have been really great to us, FDOT. You remember they came in, they made a decision to do a seawall all the way up to the water tower by the City Flagler Beach. And I think that will be like South Central Avenue, exact there. So with that said, it will be a great opportunity for us to combine these two projects. As I mentioned to you before, we have the Corps of Engineering project, 2.6 miles. FDOT, I call it project north and south of the Corps project, 2.4 miles. Now we are combining these two projects with this alternative. We're going to be building the dunes there for approximately 3.5 miles, which is a great opportunity for all of us. At this time, we do have $14,312 from FDOT, and we are working with them to allocate all that funding towards the Corps of Engineers. The shortfall to proceed with our alternative is going to be $2.4 million. FDOT verbally, they do support that. They say, we'll take a look, we'll try to find you the funding to come up with this additional funding. So it looks really very promising to move on. And still, we have a lot of work to do to start construction May 2024. Also, I have to mention this to you when we talked about the beach measurement study, the 6 alternatives, the plan, and in my mind, the plan is a goal. We talked about these tasks we have been working on, and one of these tasks also we have to do engineering investigating to decide what's our goal. What is the density of our project? Is going to be 40 cubic yards per foot, or is going to be 100 cubic yards per foot? The way how things has been changed, and our plan sometime in July to come here and do a workshop to go over much more details information about that, so we can get your input, public input, pick up a plan or a goal. But I'm sure you know this plan, it will be modified during the design phase and during the permitting phase. The most important issue for us to do the best project we can do for our community, as long as it will get permitted by DEP, by the Corps of Engineers, and by Fish and Wild. So we have, all of us, we have one common goal. With that, conclude my presentation. I will open it for any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Faith. Commissioners, any questions? Andy?
Pardon me. For the Army Corps project, the original batch of easements we've acquired, but now because of the, as you mentioned, the issues on the south side specifically, we're in another easement acquiring mode in order to start the Army Corps project.
Yes, I love working with my partners, the federal, the Corps of Engineers, the state, local, but everybody, they have their own criteria and we have to comply. At this time, for this kind of easement, the Corps of Engineers provide us with a form, and we have to get a temporary construction easement from these residents. Mr. Al-Hadid is aware of it, and he has been working with the Corps of Engineers to finalize that. Yes, we do have to do that. for the projects above and beyond the Corps of Engineer limit.
I know you talked about the profile having changed over the years. So specifically, when you designed the original Army Corps Dune project, you were going to access and do construction from the portion north of the pier, or?
Everything,
Go ahead,
sorry.
and then-
everything was going to be essentially, all the equipment, everything would be brought in from the water tower, and we would work our way up toward the pier. Typically, these projects are built south to north. The north part was only going to be used for bringing a truck down and then putting additional crews on the equipment in a 12-hour rotation. But all the equipment, everything would have been at the water tower going north.
So we've always had the water tower as the access point.
Correct, except what happened recently after Ian and Nicole, we start looking at different options. For
And now you want to, I'm just trying to get to the point of trying to wrap my head around the easements that we now have to have and why we didn't need them before.
We need two different kind of easement. We need a temporary construction easement, and we need an agreement for staging areas.
And just real quick, we don't need any, our plan was water tower going north. We were going to stay below mean high water line.
Okay.
Which I don't need any easements.
Okay.
Now, I can't even get up through there. There's 3 feet of water up against the dune, so there's no chance.
Understood. Thank you. That's what I was trying to figure. Thank you.
And our final plan, pending us coordinating with the homeowner association and maybe with the restaurant owner of the snack shack to come up with an agreement to use their property as a staging area. Also, as I mentioned, we are working with the city of Flagler Beach. They own a property there on the west side of A1A. We talked with them requesting using that area as a staging area for only 6 months, whatever the length of the Corps of Engineer project at this time.
Anything else, Commissioners? Thank you. Jason, Faith, thank you very much. Now it's time for community outreach. This 30-minute time period has been allocated for public comment on any consent agenda item or topic not on the agenda. Each speaker will be allowed up to 3 minutes to address the commission. Speakers should approach the podium, identify themselves, and direct comments to the chair. Community outreach is now open.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. My name is Daisy Henry. I live at 503 East Strange Street in Burnell. And first, I want to commend your staff for the participation in our fundraiser at the Carver Gym. Some I reached and some I didn't reach, but I got your card, and I'll be calling you later. I'm still here about the bathrooms. I know that I seem to be harping on that a whole lot, but it doesn't seem fair that you have a public park and there's no bathroom. And you've been very generous to me in my programs at the Carver Gym, my summer program. But this issue is really is upsetting me, and I would just like to, and I know that speaking with the board, you've addressed it and you was working on it, but my summer camp been there since 2008. And then prior to that, it was still being neglected. And so I just feel that at this age, what's happening now, that project need to be addressed more thoroughly and fixed for the south side. But I really appreciate what you've done and the addition. But I would like, I had talked with a couple of people at the party, and I would just like to sit down and talk it concerns my issue. And I'm not speaking for no board, I'm speaking for me as a native of Flagler County and the last building at our black old school. It's just an important issue to the south side, and a lot of things that's not being addressed correctly as I see it. But maybe we need to get some understanding and sit down to the table, because if that's center is not addressed fairly, I think that people just not going to feel a warranty, and a lot of issues have been going on and things a lot of lies been told, and we need to address that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Henry. Next speaker.
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners and officials here today. My name is Mike DeRoche, and I have been a resident of Palm Coast for 37 years. I've been a pastor of a church here for the last 23 of those years, and I currently co-pastor a church with Charles Cowart. We currently moved our operations from Moody Boulevard up to the Mondex area off of 305 to specifically target the drug culture up there. And we've been doing that for the past year. Every week I meet with 50 to 70 inmates at the Flagler County Detention Center, where we pray and we minister, we coach, and we find housing for the inmates that are housed there. The church is off of 305, County Road 2006. I'm not here to promote our church. I am not here for the purpose or political reasons, but to invoke the guidance and the wisdom from God to tackle this enormous problem affecting our county. Our prayers may be awkward, our attempts may be feeble, but since the power of prayer is not in the heart of the one who hears it, since the power of prayer is in the heart of the one who hears it and not in the one who says it, our prayers combined in this community can make the difference. So, dear, wise, and loving Father, thank you on behalf of all who are gathered here today. Thank you for your many abundant blessings in Flagler County. Thank you for life itself, for wisdom we need to fulfill our callings, for substance and unity in this room. Thank you for the ability to be involved in useful work and for the honor of being appropriate responsibilities. Thank you as well, Father, for the freedom to embrace you or the freedom to reject you. In the scriptures, you have said that citizens ought to obey the governing authorities, since you have established those very authorities to promote peace and order and justice. Therefore, Father, I pray for our Sheriff Staley, for the various levels of city officials, and in particular this assembly. I'm asking that you would grant them today wisdom to govern, a keen thirst for justice and righteousness, personal peace in their lives, and health in their lives. I pray for the agenda before us today. Please give us assurance of what would please you and what would benefit those who live and work in and around our beloved community and country. It is in your most blessed name I pray, in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hi, I'm Preston Zepp, the Flagler County Historic Society and Kings Road Historic District. Over the weekend, I found out that there's a couple of DOT projects.
Pick the mic up a little bit.
Pick the mic up.
There you go.
I forgot I'm 6'3" and everybody else is shorter. I heard that there's going to be a couple of FDOT projects. I don't know if that's part of the agenda or not. One's an overpass from the Ag Museum to Ranch House, and another one's on Dixie Highway, Brick Road. The Brick Road thing's its own monster, but the Ranch House project is such a sensitive area. We don't even let out all the sites that are in there. If a project's gonna be done there, I request that Flagler County Historic Society and state archaeologists be involved in the planning of it. Just hate to see more of our history get destroyed to make a equestrian path over US 1. And that's it.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good morning, Commissioners and Chairman. Charles Gower here again. I'd just like to thank you for considering my last request, and I was sent here on behalf of the one whom we all will have to answer at one point in the future, and I just want to be that voice for those who may not think they have a voice or are not willing to come up and speak. So that being said, in the future, I will be presenting certain topics to you as they arise, and then ones that are retro. But one topic at hand, which I would like to talk to you individually as well as here in front of the community, is the I guess it would be the zoning issue with the Whispering Meadows situation. I realize that's a long time ago, but there's still issues that are need to be addressed right now, you know, and people that are at hand that they do a lot of things for the community, and it's a significant matter. But anyhow, for today, I just want to thank you for the things that you've done already, for considering my requests in the past, and I just thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Mr. Chairman, James Fisk, Palm Coast. After seeing information online for several days, yesterday my wife and I watched the critically acclaimed movie, Path of the Panther. It's a National Geographic documentary about the plight of the Florida panther and other wildlife that are rapidly losing more and more of their natural habitat every day. After watching it, I went to the computer and brought up a map of Florida's wildlife corridor. I looked in horror at Flagler County, which was severely lacking of a wildlife corridor. There are hopes of at least seeing a broad line along the west side, particularly around the lakes, but that did not exist. I respectfully call on the commission and land planners to please make an effort to protect what little habitat our wildlife has now and expand it. The current map, which I downloaded, if you look at the Flagler County area, it's blank. There's no green in there at all. The current map shows existing areas, none in Flagler, and potential areas. This is where a lot of help is needed. I took the pledge to call on my elected officials to further their support of the Florida Wildlife Corridor, to get outside, explore, and connect with the corridor through recreational activities, to support local, indigenous-led, and sustainable ecotourism practices and companies which, when traveling in the corridor, respect our native wildlife and their habitat by leaving no trace, and also to build momentum for this campaign by sharing the Path of the Panther with my friends and family using the hashtag Path of the Panther on social media. I encourage everyone to watch the movie and take a stand to help. Please. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Next speaker.
Good morning. My name is Laura Stillman. I live in the Marine Land Acres area, just south of Washington Oaks. I have two things. First of all, to start with a compliment. The construction crews that are working in Marine Land Acres, and specifically on my street for the stormwater project, have been phenomenal. These gentlemen have been cognizant of every time somebody wants to drive by and to get to their home, to the Waste Pro crews who have such a difficult time driving down our streets as it is, and then have to back out again because there's no turnarounds at the end of our streets. These crews have have been so consistently kind to all of the neighbors. You ask them for something, and they take care of it for you. They even championed saving some of our gopher tortoises. There's a property that a crew showed up to clear, and the construction crew working on the stormwater project stopped them and said, there are gopher tortoises in there. And the gentleman, he stopped and he drove back away. I also want to address the replenishment of the dune. So it was very pleasing to get that dune back in. We were hit pretty hard with the last two storms and a lot of flooding of the neighborhood. So having that put in as an emergency was wonderful. However, if you've not gone back to look at it recently, please be aware that probably 2/3 of the width of that dune is gone now. And I've got photos, and the reason why I know how much is the photos show where the sea oats were planted and how many fewer rows of sea oats there are now. So just wanted to put that out in front of you. If you've not taken a look, you might want to take a look. I'm not here to ask for anything, except to just bring it to your attention. Thank you very much for all that you do.
Thank you. Next speaker. Seeing no one else approach, I'll close community outreach. Commissioners, any comments on the consent agenda? Not asking you to pull anything yet, just is there anything you want to talk about?
Just on 7H, regarding the hijackers lease assignment, just wanted to recognize the new assignees are here and just wanted to recognize them that they're in attendance. And I know this is important for the airport and wanted to thank them for being here. And that's it.
Ms. Pennington?
I don't know if I need, Al, if you're able to answer the question I had on 7H regarding Exhibit C, or if you want me to pull it to answer it, or.
No, I did have the opportunity to take a look at that. There is a provision in the lease. It's located on page 4 of 25. It's PDF page 175 if you're using the monitor, if you're using the link. And it does include a provision, so long as the tenant is not in default of any of the terms herein, has no payment arrearages, and has completed all of the items in Exhibit C, this agreement may be renewed by the tenant for an additional 10-year term. So there is a requirement that in order to have any kind of lease extension, all of the items that are listed in Exhibit C be completed.
Okay, that's for the extension. So my question was, under defaults and remedies, does item J also apply to Exhibit C, so failure of them to perform or comply with material covenant?
It would be considered a material covenant.
Okay, excellent.
Those improvements.
All right, and then just housekeeping, there's some pages not initialed by you, Exhibit C being one of them, if necessary.
Well, that's the only, I checked, it was the only one not.
Okay, great.
I don't know how that happened.
Great, that's it, thank you.
Mr. O'Brien?
Just echo Commissioner Dance's comments about the new lessees for hijackers. Pleased with their parties here, and know they'll do a good job operating that restaurant.
Yeah, that's the only thing I'd add is that I'm grateful to the new owners because I know it's a professional team, and I look forward to that. I think it's going to be a big step upward. All right. Commissioners, are there any items you want to pull? Mr. O'Brien?
No, sir.
Ms. Pennington?
7K.
7K?
K, yes.
K, all right. Mr. Dance?
No, sir.
No. And I, 7K also. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
A motion to approve consent minus 7K.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda with the exception of 7K. All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed say nay. Hearing none, it passes unanimously. You're in. Okay, 7K, consideration of project recommendations and ranking of the FDOT transportation alternative priorities for fiscal years 2024 and 2025 through 2028, 2029. Ms. Payne, I'll start with you.
Okay, so I have a couple of concerns. First of all, when is this due back to the FDOT as our list?
After your input, we can revise it and send it back to ODT sometime by the end of this month.
By the end of the month. Okay, so we do have some leniency. So
Yes.
I have a couple of things. I'll start with the easier ones. Item 4, the John Anderson Highway Multi-Use Trail. I had 3 residents reach out asking that that piece be removed and tabled to a night meeting. Their concerns is having obviously a 15-foot bike trail going through their driveways. No one's seen the plans or the specs of that, and so the neighborhood just was alerted this weekend, and they're asking for time to discuss that with your office.
Okay. So we don't have any design or plans at this time
Okay.
to move on with this project. We just have it on the list to request some funding to start the design, the process, and some construction. As you mentioned, it's number 4 on the list. I don't know how soon we can get the funding. If you want to have it back to you to discuss it, evening meeting, we can do that. Or if you want us to remove it from the list, I can do that. Or even to add it to the bottom of that list. This is federal funds. Usually every 2-3 years we get maybe 6 million, 10, 20 million for one project to move forward with it. So I don't see it happening soon.
Okay. The main one on here that I had a lot of feedback from is item number 2. This project is the multi-use equestrian bridge, a 1.4-mile multi-use trail that will connect Florida Ag Museum to Ranch House Grade and the historic Old Kings Road and that existing 10-foot wide multi-use trail along US 1. Here, very quickly, are the concerns given. And one is one of the chief archaeologists, Dana St. Clair, has worked in this area. And without kind of telling the public what is out there, it has been determined that it is an extremely sensitive archaeological site for Florida. Fort Fulton, the Kings Road have been documented to have slave burial sites, Seminole Indian mounds, without going into detail there, and colonial housing. They are concerned, there are some discussions right now that the county may not be aware of the federal government looking at this area for potential designation. And then their concern is by putting the pedestrian bridge over to that area, we are now making an area that is difficult to get to, readily accessible for treasure hunters. And when I tell you it's sensitive, there is actually armed guard on some of the land out there right now. And so they're asking that before we go forward in putting this in front of the FDOT, that at least the county staff could take a meeting with state archaeological groups, including Dana St. Clair, so that they can brief you on that, the issue with letting foot traffic and horses come into that area and what's over there. So I would like to, and then the final thing, obviously, I'm not sure, Faith, if you're aware, number 6, the project study to investigate the old brick road. The FDOT did do a study on this previously. It's about 500 pages. I don't know if you have a copy of the book, but that might be a good thing to give you to look at, because it does have discussions about alternative use for the road already done by them. So I don't know if we want to just take this and table it just for a little bit and let the staff work with a couple core groups and renumber the plan. But I am mainly concerned about number 2.
Number 2, as you can see, is number 2 on the list. We're requesting some funding, and usually the first phase of that project, before we move on to the design phase, we do some environmental analysis. and all that phase will be funded by the federal, by FDOT, and we can take a look at all these environmental issues, and based on that, we have public meetings, we get everybody input, we will coordinate with all the agencies, but all that process will be getting all that information, and based on that, yes.
And you may not be aware of this, the main portion of this land just went into a 5-year lease with the Kings Road Group. So I think I would like to just take, the next 2 weeks till the next meeting and reevaluate the list numbering and just have those discussions with staff and maybe myself or whoever else on this board, just to make sure that 2 and 4, that the neighborhood gets to have a night meeting so they can give their piece, and number 2, so we can just talk a little bit more with staff about what's up there before we talk about bringing in pedestrian foot.
Sure, we can do, and even when we submit a project, even if there is some funding program for a certain project, still you as a commissioners, you can reallocate the funding from one project to another. Right now, the first project, Pulo Park, originally the funding came to this bridge project, but then we reallocated it. So you still have a lot of opportunity to move the funding from one project to another, revise your list. We can schedule a meeting and take a look at it anytime you wish.
Did you have any questions? Because I know you.
Well, I want to just remove number 4.
You'd like
Just remove it.
Just remove it?
Just get it off there.
I feel that way about
has no
number
business
2.
on there. You go out and look at that road, and there's no business, there's no place to put that walk. So let's just take that off.
No problem, we'll do
Okay,
that.
gone.
Yes,
I like
sir.
that.
I
All right.
feel that way about number 2 because there is some discussions going on right now with our federal, to look at that for National Historic Designation. It's a really sensitive area, and it has a lot of parties involved in that particular area, and they don't want pedestrian in there. And want to make sure we kind of keep that at home right now to discuss that area.
So your recommendation to move number 2 and number 4? From the list.
No, we
no
haven't done that
consensus yet
yet.
on
We
any
haven't
of
done
this.
that yet.
Okay.
So I would recommend that you make the motion
Okay.
to table it, but put in there and remove number 4.
Well, hold on. Let's
Andy, go ahead and listen to Andy.
everybody take a deep breath.
Well,
How long have these been on here? Is there any new project on here?
Not to mine, Old Brick Road. It is the first time, I think last year we added to our list, but none of these projects.
And Old Brick
new
is on
this
there
list.
because it's part of our strategic plan. I mean, that's been an item that's been on there for a while, and it's been added to the strategic plan to look at that.
It came to my attention, different recommendation, different opinions, what we can do with that roadway. So based on that, we have to do some kind of study based on facts and come up with a
And I
recommendation.
only brought it up because there was a study that I sent out by the FDOT already. In
So
case you could-
I think just the point I'm making is these are, as alternative projects for DOT, they're slow moving.
Yes.
They've been on here a while. And each of these are mainly have to do with right-of-ways on these state roads, county roads, and I got the same emails from John Anderson, but I mean, these are public right-of-ways. I mean, these right-of-ways are for the public. And the public deserves access along any of these state roads or county roads, whether it's a sidewalk or a bike lane or a multi-use trail. It's not individually owned by each of those property owners. And I think you would, if you do open it up, I think you'll probably find that there are residents out there that would enjoy the ability to walk in a safe environment along the edge of the road, so that they're not either bicycling, walking, or if they're impaired, have a mobility device that they can use in a safe pedestrian access way. So the second point being, we're in the midst of our recreation and parks master planning project, which incorporates all of our pedestrian trails and access ways. And before we jump to any conclusions on what's to be pulled and not, I think we're still early in that process, and we have a lot of public input that's left for the public to weigh in on. John Anderson, I mean, let's give, like you said, I think through that process, people will have an opportunity to have input. And we can see, once it's compiled, where the hot spots are for people requesting additional trails or access ways. So not to say I don't have some concerns. I know the pedestrian bridge overpass has been on there a while. And due to this same type of discussion, we got the Bulow Creek headwaters moved up to 1. And there is a lot of momentum now with the completion of the 100 overpass bridge to be able to complete a loop now, which takes advantage of that bridge. So these are great conversations, but it's these are slow-moving programs. So really, we only have the top one that is seeing significant movement within a potential PD&E survey and even with the tourism center tying into it. But I mean, I'm okay with having some additional conversation. I just, when we did get some emails, but I think everybody should just take a deep breath, because these are long-term, slow-moving projects, and we still have input from the Parks master planning process you have to look at.
Anything else? Donnie, any questions?
I would still like to then take the time to pull this back and discuss with staff the numbering of it, where they belong. So I'd like to make a motion. Motion regarding item 7K, the consideration of project recommendations and ranking of the FDOT transportation alternative priorities for fiscal year 2024-5 to table this until time certain, May 15th at 5 p.m., at which time we, in the interim, speak with staff regarding the prioritization of these numbers.
Thank you. My staff, they will be here at that board meeting. I will be out of town at that time, but we will handle.
Is there a second for the motion?
I'm not adverse to discussion. I mean, I'll second it. And that gives some of the residents an opportunity.
Could it come back on, not on this consent agenda?
Yeah.
Come back as an item to, okay.
It's been moved and seconded, and open up to public comment. Anybody in the public wish to discuss 7K? Good morning, Richard.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name's Richard Hamilton. I'm a resident of Flagler County, and as you probably all know, I have a strong interest in cycling trails throughout the county. I'd like to just back up Andy's comment about needing to spend some time to consider how this, because what I found is there are so many different avenues for trails and transportation projects that what we're talking about here is just one of different avenues. You have the Office of Greenways of Trails and the recent funding of Sun Trail programs, which has some impact on the Old Kings Road project. So this is just one list out of several, and we somehow do need to have a better coordination of everything that's going on. Faith does a wonderful job in going and finding funding for certain things, and we know that it has to get onto the program if you want it to happen anytime, and it could be 5 to 10 years out. I'll probably be dead before some of these projects happen, unfortunately. But I think getting a better idea of how the transportation alternatives program fits with the Sun Trail program, fits with the TPO Call for Projects program, which we don't have anything in on. And I think, that can be done in the next couple of weeks and get in on the DOT listing. Because there are other stuff going on DOT projects that we know of as well that are not on this list. So it's a hodgepodge. There are too many tentacles, and we need a better coordination. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Richard. Next speaker. Seeing no one approach, I'll close public comment, and I'll call the vote. All of those in favor of tabling item 7K until our next meeting, time certain, 5 o'clock. All in favor, say aye.
Or thereafter.
All opposed, say nay.
Mr.
Hearing
Chair,
none.
Mr. Chair, just to clarify on that motion, not strictly at 5 o'clock, 5 o'clock or thereafter. at the
After,
meeting.
right.
That is a typical
Right.
way we articulate
Right,
that.
5 o'clock or when it can come up. All right.
Thank you,
Okay,
sir.
all in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. Hearing none, the motion passes. On to general business. Item 8A, perpetual easement agreement between Flagler County and the Hammock Dunes Owners Association Incorporated for beach restoration and maintenance. Mr. Adid.
As the commission knows, we have been working for an extensive period of time on developing an easement with the Hammock Dunes Owners Association. And as you're aware, we have been going back and forth, and we do not see eye to eye with some of the direction in the document. The principal problem is that the direction that the Owners Association wants to proceed with requires essentially ceding significant control over the way projects are planned. You just heard from Ms. Al-Khatib and Mr. Hara about how beach projects evolve, the complicated planning that goes into them. We certainly have worked very hard with Hammock Dunes over the years in doing projects. I can remember very recently giving them an easement to use Jungle Hut Road Park in order to facilitate the accomplishment of a project that they want to do. So it's not, this isn't our first rodeo with the Hammock Dunes in terms of working on beach projects. It's just that when we think of easement, we think of the right to do a project, because you can make it subject to funding, make it subject to various things. But when there's an attempt to try to direct your legislative decision-making, we're very protective of that. I've identified a number of things. I don't want to go over them in detail unless you want me to. But I would just tell you that in the back and forth on the agreement, just for an example, the very first one that I looked at had a very specifically described project. Mr. Chairman, you may remember you asked me, hey, we need to try to get this on the agenda. And because it prescribed a particular project, which the board had not agreed to, which was not a part of any engineering drawing that had been done or considered by the engineering department, I thought it'd be inappropriate. I mean, unless the board wanted to do that. So I removed it. Then the document came back and, and I explained why I removed it. And the document came back, and in that iteration, it said they wanted to adopt, the agreement would adopt alternative 6 of the draft beach management plan. So I did not think that was appropriate. So we keep going back and forth, and what I'm trying to do is to, on behalf of the county, to confine it to essentially function as an easement agreement. There's certainly some valuable parts of it. It's very lengthy, as you know. It's over 160 pages. It has multiple pages of whereas clauses, I think about 3 pages of whereas clauses, all of which are included as contractual terms and conditions. They're not just statements of intent, specifically worded as items for contract consideration. Another example of the difficulties that we've had in negotiating, there was an attachment related to the transects along the beach profile of the Hammock Dunes property. And I had
removed it and explained why it would be removed. But then it got reintroduced again as a different document, although still described as the HDOA transects, and that's the cross line, the way the dune, looks at a particular point. I found that a different document had been substituted entirely, which I'd never seen before, and I furnished it to engineering. The index indicated that it was from the beach plan, but it was not. There was some additional data on it. In fact, there was the LIDAR, February 2023 LIDAR data was contained within this document. So we had never seen it as one of the things that I've outlined or identified in the memorandum. I highlighted what I thought were troubling provisions. I think it needs more work. I think we need to think of it more as an easement agreement rather than being a project agreement. I understand the interest of the Hammock Dunes Owners Association. I've worked with them very closely for a very substantial amount of time. I will say that after all of the consideration on our side of the fence, that is the staff side of the fence, administration is not comfortable with the document. They do not support it. The county engineer does not support it. And they operate differently. That's operations. That's the operations side that figures out who's going to do what with the money and so on. And the engineering side gets the permits and deals with the agencies. And my side of it is I have to make sure that as they do their work, that it doesn't create any legal problems, that we get what we need to do working with agencies. It does particularly concern me that it has been presented as that this would be the template that we would use throughout the beach side. And I can tell you that there's no way I can take a 160-page document. I had enough trouble with, a few page documents going to owners, getting them to sign easements, as you well know. So I think it's too much for us to do at this point in time, and I think it needs more work.
Mr. O'Brien.
All right, where do I start here? Al, this whole process to me is very troubling and concerning. And I'll just start at the beginning here for me. In the way you wrote up this agenda item in our packet, okay? I'm gonna read it. The board at the workshop moved the HDOA agreement text forward without discussion of the particulars, and this has given us substantial concern on a few points. That's this from your write-up in our agenda packet. I beg to differ with you about not discussing the particulars at the workshop. And if I go back and I look at the minutes, and I'm just going to read a few things here. This is verbatim our minutes that were also published that we just approved at the beginning of this meeting. Chair Hansen stated that his only fear is overcommitting the county to money that's not there. Mr. Davis stated that the commitment is determined by the project, okay? Commissioner O'Brien asked, and these are questions I asked to Sean, Commissioner O'Brien asked if this document obligates the county to spend any money or county resources. Mr. Moylan answered no. Current funds are being obligated. The only commitment is to seek funding, and once funding is identified, it will trigger other requirements. Commissioner O'Brien asked if the proposed agreement protects the county from any transfer of liability from the Hammock Dunes Owners Association to the county. Mr. Moylan answered, yes, it doesn't obligate us. Commissioner O'Brien asked if the Board of County Commissioners' position to protect the shoreline is strengthened by the easements and more efficient in case of emergency measures. Mr. Moylan responded yes. Commissioner O'Brien asked what staff's rationale was for wanting to go in order of beach management plan, dedicated funding source, identification, and then easements. Mr. Moylan answered he communicates the views of the staff. The document first presented was completely different than the document now. Commissioner O'Brien and Commissioner Pennington shared support. And then that's my excerpt from the minutes. So again, I think we did have substantial discussion at the workshop, and I guess my question for you is, why is this now brought up at basically 3 weeks after we had this workshop? And the first I know that I heard about it from you was last week in a phone call, and then we had emails going back and forth with staff and commissioners, which are all public record, anybody can get them. But it almost seems like you're impugning the work of your staff, like they didn't do their job, and now you're wanting to have us take a step back because you have concerns that we would be putting the county in a bad position. And I understand you're our attorney, you're supposed to advise us, and I get all that, but the timing of it is concerning to me, and the way that we went about this, because if I go and read Mr. Davis's email that was sent to all of us, he highlights and he outlines the dates, and all the different meetings that the Owners Association had with staff over weeks or months or however long it was. I wasn't privy to those, a part of those, but there was obviously negotiations and discussion between both parties, and now all of a sudden, that's all I have right this second. I probably have some more comments, but just want to get that off my chest.
No, that's good. Thanks.
Can I respond to that?
Sure.
Commissioner O'Brien, I had actually talked to you several weeks ago after the workshop. The board may remember that I was not able to be present for the workshop because of a medical procedure. Mr. Moylan's review was not based on looking at performance criteria that were in the document. I had, prior to that time, eliminated those things that would have an impact on the board's actions on beach management projects. Mr. Moylan's review was very much confined, and he was not involved with the specifics of, for instance, the transects that I was talking to you about, the beach management plan, what its role was. And the memorandum, of course, that was a workshop. I listened, although I was absent, I listened to the workshop, and I also heard board members talk about, well, we want to make sure that all the details are right. I didn't think that it was a thorough review of the document. The board indicated an intent that they wanted to go in this direction, and my staff report does not stop you. It simply identifies what I consider things that need to be brought to your attention so that you're aware. So, for example, do you want your beach management plan, which is now in draft only, not been completed, do you want to make it a contractual obligation? That is, that in order for you to adopt the beach management plan as it applies to Hammock Dunes, do you want to subject that to a contractual agreement, that you would need their permission to enter that beach management plan? Now, if you believe that that is appropriate, that's fine. We will do as you wish. But it is my obligation to point those out. There are a number of performance standards referenced. If you understand those, I mean, I highlighted, I didn't go through and explain each one. I'm happy to, if you want me to go page by page. I don't remember how many I had identified right now. That's easy to see. You'll highlighted them. One of the examples I recall required the creation of a public purpose facility. Are you sure that you understand that and want to do that? I indicated in one of my communications that we had talked with our funding agencies, FEMA, the Army Corps. We also spoke with a law firm that's very experienced, Neighbors Giblin, in beach management projects and particularly special assessment districts. And they had all indicated that this would not be of assistance. It wasn't anything that was being done presently in the state of Florida. That's not to say that this is not a wise approach. It is to say that this requires us to do that. And this may not be an answer for us. We have not vetted that theory thoroughly. So it's something for you to consider. I'm happy to answer any questions about any aspect. I thought that the items that I had identified were explanatory. If you are self-explanatory, I'm happy to discuss any one of them.
Mr. Dance.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, as a contrary point of view, I mean, I went through and read the minutes as well, just to make sure we were on a consistent path. I mean, this is a significant document that we did workshop once. It's not unusual to take multiple stabs at something of this magnitude to be able to make sure that we are all in agreement. Not that we all have to be in agreement, but I think as our negotiator, I think Mr. Hadid needs to be in a strength of, in that position to be able to negotiate effectively for us. And that's how I would like to see him negotiating this thing, to where when it comes back to us, our legal department is comfortable with the agreement that comes back to us. I don't get that comfort right now. I appreciate we've got an engaged partner, and I think that will ultimately make sure that we have an agreement that is going to be suitable for everybody. I mean, and if in its simplest terms, right, a perpetual easement for what we need for maintaining and building dunes is just to grant that easement and right-of-way so that we can do the work. It was clearly identified by the Army Corps gentleman when he described why we needed the additional area by the water tower. I mean, it's in its simplest terms, that's it. In its simplest terms, the project for the other pieces were 2-page documents. You know, we've got 18 sections of this agreement that have been highlighted by legal that are still have issues or disagreements in either language or meaning. The 28 whereases, to me, just add to the complexity of the issue. 7 of those whereases are flagged. And if you compare that to the other dune easement resolution, we had 11 whereases that accomplished what we needed to do on easement, on resolution 2020-71. This actual language, when you take out all the exhibits, is 7 pages long for a perpetual easement compared to the 1 page of the Army Corps perpetual easement. HDO, the perpetual easement, again, I go back to the 163 pages of exhibits which become part of the agreement. I know it's an oversimplification to do the comparison. I mean, I'm doing it on purpose. It's an oversimplification. Basic, when you get down to it, the easement is just that, to grant access and to do the work. So I go back to the recommendations. I mean, I think it needs more fine tuning. The fact that we don't have any of our departments in line, admin, engineering, legal, that are in line yet. I still don't think that I have an agreement on a fiscal impact. I mean, I would like a real fiscal impact analysis. I think that's part of the transparency of the document. In retrospect, I mean, what I really want to see, I don't know that we'll get it, but Mr. Hadid mentioned it, is that there are other opportunities for other associations, property owners to enter into this type of agreement. really, we've started at the basis where we have an agreement from Hammock Dunes Owners Association that was presented to us to review. I mean, I would like to know what our legal department's standard base agreement for perpetual easements would be, and how, you know, how many pages does that look to accomplish what we need to accomplish with these property owners? And then the differences being, right, each property is different, and that's where you address those differences is in the exhibits. But the base agreement should be the same that goes to all of those parties, and then you look at the uniqueness of the properties. I'm not there yet. I think we have a great, a great partner. These gentlemen are entirely engaged in the process, and they are very, very smart. They know what they're doing, and I value their guidance on their part. But I think we need to place Mr. Hadid and the legal staff in a strong position to negotiate and be able to get a comfort level so that there is a recommended document that comes back to us.
Thank you. Ms. Pennington? you have anything?
Well, first I'm going to say that I ditto to Commissioner O'Brien. I thought when we left that workshop, it was pretty clear that we directed legal to come back to with something that had,
Right, we did.
Was amendable, and understanding that they're a unique property and they have concerns that they are legitimate, and that also, though, that, we didn't financially constrain our county. I will say this, though, just in general, going back to what Commissioner O'Brien said, I do struggle with having to pretend to be an attorney on some of this when we have a staff of attorneys, and oftentimes question whether or not our attorney opinion is sound. And I don't want to be in that position, especially with something this sensitive. So I do have concerns, just as Commissioner Dance said, but I really thought we were going to see a work product come back to us that had taken into account what we said in the workshop, and that doesn't appear what's happened here.
Yeah, I agree. We gave pretty clear guidance from all of us that that by this date they would have it worked out, come back, and they haven't done that. I'm concerned that Mr. Hadid, that you said that the engineer doesn't like this, engineering doesn't like this, and admin doesn't like this. Can you point out why they don't? What is it that their concerns are?
I think you best direct that question to them. I am not an operations expert, and I'm not an engineer.
Heidi?
Certainly, I can go over that. I had forwarded an email to you regarding comments and concerns that Commissioner Sullivan had. I thought that it would be helpful having all 5 of you present during this discussion. That was the first issue that I had, understanding that he was not going to be with us. I did forward to you his comments and concerns. But internally, when we met with staff, I think the initial concern was that in looking at the requirements and wanting to restore the beach back to a 1972 beach profile, which would account for some 80 cubic yards per linear foot, that far exceeds anything that we've been able to do currently with the funding we have. There is no program funding for this. I felt that in looking at it, although they say that this is not an obligatory document, that it would be project-specific, funding-specific, I think that the nature of how the document is worded, it does put onus on us that we would then be accepting responsibility, that we would have to live up to that expectation. There was concern that from the last time we met to even today's meeting, there continues to be changes to the document and new things added. There's a new Exhibit F that was referenced as being part of a beach plan. That document was, the first time we saw it was there. There are elements that look similar, but it is a new document or a new attachment. So it just begs to, question whether or not we're ready. And we as staff still had concerns in talking to our county engineering staff. and I'm sure that Faith can probably elaborate a little more, but in looking at the requirements of what the county would have, we would essentially have to add another staff person to our engineering department just to manage this project or manage this contract. And if this is going to be the so-called standard that we're going to be using along the entire coastline, to me, that's even more problematic. Again, we do not have funding identified. I know that Faith and the gentleman from Army Corps, Jason, had provided a great overview of where we're at. Right now, although Faith has been successful with FDOT in securing funding, right now we have a $2.4 million deficit just within that Army Corps project. That doesn't take into account the rest of the coastline. And what does that look like moving forward? We don't have dedicated funding. We've been using a little bit of TDC funding for some of those matches, but there is no local match. We have not finalized what that financial study is going to look like, where's the money coming from, and to me, it just obligates us for a lot of money to protect a large portion of private property. These are my concerns. I'll have Faith convey what the engineering's concerns are.
Good morning, Faith Al-Khatib, County Engineer. What is the goal of this easement? I know myself and my staff, we have been working with the Homeowner Association for at least 4 or 5 years. We started that discussion after Matthews. We used to have a monthly meeting between myself and some of the Homeowner Association. There was an existing transparency. We shared a lot of information with them. There's a lot of communication, and I think we did establish some kind of trust between us and between them. Our goal, or my goal as a county engineer, to get this easement, to give me the authority to go in and construct any kind of project within that area. At this time, we did take a look at it as a comprehensive plan. We are trying to start the funding study phase. We're trying to finalize and start having design investigation to identify some obstacle, to decide what's the density of our project it will be. Our goal is exactly like their goal. We want to do the best for the community, not only for the Hammock Dunes area. We're having at least 5-6 miles of homeowner associations area, and also a lot of private property owners, their homes. We cannot take this kind of easement and start implementing it for every homeowner property out there. It will create a lot of hardship on myself, not myself as a county engineer, for the upcoming county engineer in the future, for the engineering staff. With that said, the purpose of this goal, to give us the authority whenever funding available to come in and work with them and implement that. My understanding is this easement, it's a contract. At this time, it's really very early to enter into a contract with them and to finalize and identify these terms and conditions. With that said, we're looking at it this way, and slowly, we have to keep amending this contract, and that will create a hardship on us. So we are not telling them we don't want to work with them. We don't want to help them. We want that. We want to have a comprehensive plan for a Flagler County coastline. With that said, all what I'm asking, give me an easement, and in 1 year, after we implement the plan, in 1 year again, now after Ian and Nicole, we received some funding to start doing a design phase. And during that design phase, we will coordinate with the permitting agency, and then we'll identify our project limit and also the density of that project. Is going to be dredging, and trucking. At this time, my understanding, it started, let's go to alternative number 6. And that's my ideal solution as an engineer. I do agree with them. But let's do it differently. Let's have their permission and their approval to work with them and for them, and slowly adding some terms and conditions to this easement. This is the way how I see it.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Bryan.
One of the things in terms of the discussion here that I think is being mischaracterized, when we had the workshop,
Single
all the
homeowners,
property owners
yeah.
in the 12 miles. It
No, you're
was-
correct.
It was just this segment, which is a large chunk of it, it's 5/12ths of it, and knocks out a portion of it and gets things moving.
No, you're
So
correct. That's what we said.
I think that's been mischaracterized in terms of, I don't think there was ever any intention to take a complicated easement like this, and I agree it is complicated, with 160 pages worth of documentation to, a single-family residential property owner. I don't think that was the intention or the spirit of what we were talking about.
Excuse me, it actually was referenced as applicable to Painter's Hill at the workshop.
Language within the HDOA's documents about referencing it as atypical moving forward.
That's not the way I took it during our
But you have to
discussions.
understand, being a kind of a groundbreaking document,
Yeah.
they would be foolish not to use it as the basis, as the other properties would definitely gravitate to it.
Well, there again, I don't want to be playing lawyer. One other thing, Mr. Chair, I take Commissioner Dance's points. I agree with most of what he said. But my objection is to the process here and how, as Ms. Pennington stated, we went through a process. We thought we got to the point where staff was going to go back and basically clean up the document and get it to the point where we could take action on it. And it seems like we're back to before square one here again. And I just think it puts us in a bad light in terms of, how we do business and negotiate contracts and agreements. So.
Yeah, Don, I agree with that.
Mr.
I
Chair.
agree with that.
But I mean, to be honest, there's a lot of pressure to move this forward as quickly as possible, and that was indicated at the last workshop. There was pressure put on us to move this forward from Hammock Dunes, and so we have to weigh all of that. They keep going back to now finding out that there's financial commitments from the county that are tied to this, which goes back to my financial or fiscal impact statement. I mean, I think that's important. Now we hear today that we would need a staff person or more to manage this, and personally, I want to find out why. I want to know how the portions affect that. I mean, there's a lot to this agreement. I just think, maybe we moved it to action item too quickly. It probably needed more workshop time, but there was a lot of pressure on us to move this forward as quickly as possible. So if we made an error, we made it in accommodating that and moved it to here. It's a big document that requires a lot of time by staff, and there's still a lot of questions left.
So
If I can just make this comment. I've been addressing this issue, I can't even remember how many months. Discussions definitely started in 2022 about the concepts. A lot of research was done. A lot of examples were thrown out. It was really having to do with how do we approach beach management projects. Dave Eckert and Steve Davis looked at a lot of other areas in the country and dove into doing that. And as you know, they also did their own analysis and a lot of graphs and so forth, and that was incredibly valuable. And we learned a lot through this process. That is not to taint it at all, but I would just tell you that when I got each iteration, I said, well, no, we have to take that out. And I'm very particular in attaching comments to my red line. No, we cannot include this because it implicates expenditure, or no, we cannot include this because it tramples on the board's legislative authority. For instance, the beach management plan that I referenced. no, we can't include this because this has a direct financial consequence. So I kept removing things, but they would come back in the same form. And when Sean looked at it, he had not been a part of that. I would not have subjected anyone to the labor of a half a year in understanding what all these terms meant and what's a performance standard and what's a transect and what's a beach profile. The agreement required that we restore to the 1972 beach profile. So I struck that, and what they provided was a profile before 1990. And so it never got to an equilibrium, is the way I described it. And Mr. Moylan was just not familiar with all of that stuff. He was looking at it from his own view and trying to put in clauses like subject to, funding. But that was not a cure-all phrase. It's simple as that. The devil's in the detail. But having said all of this, as I've made clear to the board, I did it in my memo, if you want to go forward, you understand these provisions, that's fine, we'll do it. I yellow highlighted the clauses so that you would look at them, focus on them and say, okay, do I as a county commissioner, do I agree to be contractually bound by this language? Do I have a question about this language? Am I comfortable with this language? So that's really what we were doing. You had a workshop. A workshop is not a final decision on a document. It never has been. So, I listened to that workshop, those minutes, and I believe that I had the responsibility, in the words of at least two commissioners, maybe three actually, about details. I'm a detail guy. I'm pointing out to you the details that are troubling. Structurally, it's a very challenging document because you're taking an easement and you're taking an agreement about a beach plan and you're combining the two. That's typically not done. They're separate. So, I'm willing to work with the challenge. If you're comfortable with this and you approve this, we can have it signed. We can have it given to the chair to sign. If you want to pause, you can do that. If you want to ask questions, you can do that. It really lies in your hands. It is your agreement, not mine.
Ms. Pennington.
So as a new member of the board, what I've learned here today is that the engineering department's been having discussions for 4 to 5 years, sometimes on a monthly basis. You've been having discussions with Hammock Dunes for years. Meanwhile, we're going back into a hurricane season. There's no commitment there to protect them. And we can play attorney with the document that we gave instruction in a workshop to show us your cleaned up version of that was safe and protective of the county's rights and also a, cost analysis. And we're now finding out that we need a coastal planning person to add to staff, all on the day of this meeting when we've had 3 weeks since the last meeting where we could have had this bullet pointed. I can't go through a contract and look at highlighted items and come to conclusions that we need to add staff, that we're going to be financially responsible. And I'm just surprised that, to hear how long this has dragged out. It's just, to me, not fair to this neighborhood who has come in good faith in an attempt to get this done to protect their property, which is our job, to protect their value and their property. And we just can't seem to get on the right page. So I don't know what the right answer is here. I don't know how much more time we can continue to burn. I'm not saying that this is a perfect document because now staff, legal, everyone else doesn't agree to it, and we don't have an alternative document to look at. So I'm very disappointed, I guess is the word. And I want to get it right, and I want to get it right before we have major catastrophes and impact to value out there.
I agree, it's not ready to be signed.
Well, I'm not the attorney either. I just know that our attorney needs to be given the charge to negotiate so that they can come back with, in my opinion, a document that protects the county, but also works with the Hammock Dunes Owners Association to cover the needs. If there's a fiscal impact to this agreement, it needs to be transparent, and we need to know what it is and why. I mean, I think Mr. Hadid is the one to negotiate this, but if you don't, you need to let him know so he can hire an outside consultant. But I have full faith in Mr. Hadid to move this forward, and he needs to be given the authority to negotiate to his comfort level. And as a team, right, our administrative and engineering team, we should all be on the same page with this. There should be no fractures.
Just, Mr. Hadid, can we get this done by Friday? 5 days, 4 days?
I can tell you this. If I go through here and take out those things that I think are responsible, I expect that I will get edits back. I can't predict that I won't get edits back. You know, Mr. Hanson, I think maybe I'll send all of you my prior comment copies, my red line that shows detailed explanations of why things needed to be deleted. And in the next following document, they came back in, sometimes below the radar. Can it be done by Friday? If there's an attempt to claw back, that's the word I was looking for. If there's an attempt to claw back the ground that I am communicating to them is not appropriate in this document, if there's a clawback, we're not going to be done by Friday. And I don't even know how to do that because you've got to have a board meeting. You can't delegate to us to finalize a contract, not of this magnitude.
Sounds like that's probably unreasonable, Mr.
Yeah, I'll
Chair.
just throw it out there. Because it has to be done in time to get it in front of this next 2 weeks from now, this next board, so.
Oh, well, first off, you do understand that we can do an easement just like we've been doing with everybody else for Hammock Dunes to make them qualified to get the benefits of the work that we've done, state and et cetera, and get projects moving. That presentation this morning should have told you that things are not static. There's an intense amount of effort being used to bring resources to bear. We've been doing easements for quite a long time here, successfully. They can sign an easement that will allow us to begin these projects. That is a very simple document. We've got them done. And then worry about a more complex document if you wish to go that route. That is one route. If you want to still try to make it all one document, I can live with that.
That's what we said in the workshop.
Yeah.
So.
Well, to say I'm disappointed is an overstatement, because we gave you direction to get this done so we could vote on it today, and that didn't happen. And I think Mr. O'Brien has pointed that out clearly, that kind of
You can
puts
sign
everybody in
today.
a bad light.
If you approve it, you can take this document and approve it.
I don't think so. You've raised concerns, and I understand them.
And contradicted
These are not new concerns.
Well,
I've discussed this with each of you. Maybe not the particulars, but my concern about getting to this point.
Faith, is their area going to obtain emergency sand coming up?
Thank you for asking this question. Yes, we
Yeah.
have to start dumping sand within their homeowner association as soon as possible. And we allocated $3.5 million to do that for their community. I cannot start this project if I don't have a construction easement between us and them. Yes. And I do recommend maybe to have an easement now and just keep working on negotiating the terms and the conditions for the contract.
When is it that you need an easement by?
If it's up to me, I will say yesterday before I allocated this funding. I think we should get it by maybe the end of this month. Our plan to be starting the project within their area by June 1st at this time.
And our goal is to get one and done easement for them.
Yeah.
Correct?
Right.
And she needs it before the end of the month to start theirs. Yeah, I think I would like to hear from Hammock Dunes and anyone else that would like to speak on the matter before.
Normally, we'd need a motion first, but we can go around that, I guess. So I'm going to open item 8A to public comment at this time. Anybody wishing to speak on item 8A, please come to the podium. You have 3 minutes, and address your comments to the chair. Status as the applicant, you have 15 minutes.
Greg Davis, President of Hammock Dunes Owners Association. I'm asking both David Eckert and David Condent to join me at the mic so we can have some balance in our comments here. Also, if you could bring up the slides that we have put together as well. I'm going to talk through those as well.
The PowerPoint.
Yeah, the PowerPoint, please, yes. Okay. And, let me begin by saying, first of all, that, I categorically reject, as president of the association, the notion of tabling this exercise. And I also categorically reject a number of the comments that were made as well. I took the comments to be that we implied that we've acted in bad faith, and that is not the case. From a review standpoint, yes, there's been multiple versions of this document that's gone back and forth. We've done this document, initiated this document at the request of the county. And I think as chair, you recognize that, realize that. We've done it at your request, and we've put a lot of time and effort in that document. I also want to categorically say that there's been 3 versions of this document that we've been notified by county staff was okay, including the last version. And this notion that we have to comply with the dog ate the paper because there seems to be some sort of communication issue internally within the organization is reprehensible to me in conduct. As a guy 40 years in business, I've never seen conduct like that coming from any governmental agency, governmental organization. I've just never seen that before. And that is reprehensible. It's absolutely reprehensible itself. So with that, okay. As we presented in our last team to go down is to put Hammock Dunes in the northern shore in the same treatment and condition and getting the same results that has been result of Flagler Beach. It's been over a 4-year process in getting that, and to the best of my knowledge, easements are still not done. As a matter of fact, what my takeaway from the Corps of Engineer comments and from the county engineer comments are that we're back to easements again. So this resolution of the problem is, in our view, is a perpetual easement to get that done. That is the solution set that we've been talking about. Next one down. Oh, the right, okay. Oh, there we go, right, not left, okay. So in some, very simple terms, as we've presented before, and I'm just gonna be blunt about it. This is project management 101 stuff, it really is. I mean, I'm just gonna be blunt about it. It's project management 101 kind of stuff. And the only thing that we're talking about from a program perspective is that when you go back to how this project has been done before, it's been done in serial tasks. And we're just saying, hey, we need to make that done in parallel tasks as opposed to serial. And as stated by the Corps of Engineers earlier today, that the long pole in the tent and the reason that you're going to have to be back reconsidering other issues in Flagler Beach is easements. And we're just saying, and hey, in parallel, get those things out of the way first, right? And you have four property owners who voluntarily come to you and said, we want to get this done to take care of 5.5 miles of segment of the beach. And I gotta tell you, it's beyond me from a program perspective. It's beyond me from a program perspective why that there is no initiative on the county's part of wanting to get that done and why it has to continue to be delayed. It's beyond me. It really is. So I think that the notion of tabling this thing is, again, to perpetuate and to continue to put us on the path that Flagler Beach has experienced. Okay. Nature controls this. Okay. If you want to talk about pressure that Commissioner Dance is driving this issue, it's not us. It's not us. It's nature. Our beach is in such bad condition where we're losing over 3 cubic yards, where you have a thunderstorm that went through, literally a thunderstorm that went through 2 weeks ago and took out half of the 6 yards of emergency sand that was put down. It's not us. It's nature that's causing this issue. And what we're trying to do is get a solution set to protect our property and protect our property as owners. And us trying to perform something, frankly, that's a basic function of government, which is safety and security and protecting individuals. This is really what we're talking about here. We're appreciative of the 6 cubic yards of sand that'll be coming down. We're really appreciative of that, but that's not enough. We know that. You know that as well, just based on your last experience from 2 weeks ago. The result in not moving things forward is, again, as citizens, as residents, as homeowners associations, is more ragtag homes. Without the dredge, restoration of the primary dune will be removed south of Iron Park. We know that already. Our dune is already, parts of ours are already removed. Houses red tagged to Painter's Hill, on, including HDOA. Not county staff, not regulatory process, not state and federal entities. It's the bottom line to it. Mother Nature controls the schedule on this. David, come up and make some comments, please.
Why don't you work the button for me here? So, Greg, you were first, Commissioner Hanson, you were first shown the possibility of front-running the easements 4 months ago, 5 months ago. And when you saw this concept, you supported it. And I think you still support it. Yes. The rejection of the perpetual easement would be very bad for the county as well as for Hammock Dunes, because it aborts a process that is very structurally strong from a skeleton standpoint. And there's a few slides here, but the big thing that I want to say is we cannot accept the small lot perpetual easements like the Army Corps. The Army Corps 1 page is included in our 12 page as one of the exhibits. There's 164 pages, but there's 12 pages, including the signature pages of the front end. All the other pages that we're saying that this document is so complex are essentially the description of our land We have 10 land segments. Of the 10 land segments, there's a preservation area as established in the DRI that's 40 pages. There's the Army Corps easement that's part of those attachments. There's an existing joint coastal permit with the Army Corps and with the Florida DEP that's on our land. We have to disclose those within the easement. And then we have a 4-page Exhibit F. Now I'm going to go through these next few slides to see what we're talking about that Al is rejecting as a restraint relative to the loss of legislative control by the county commissioners that is not true. And we don't intend it to be true. So the fact that we're sneaking in documents relative to stuff is really pretty disrespectful. And I have to say, everything that we have attempted to do was to work with you to make this as an example for the large property owners. Now, of course, within Painters Hill, you have to have, because you don't have a beach management plan, you have to give the easement to the signers that have the 50-foot lots or the 100-foot lots some idea of what you would do if they were to give you a perpetual easement on their land. What is the concept? The Army Corps 1-page document is attached to a 2,000-page beach management plan. So when that individual signs that easement, it has a structure that we're going to do 11-year renourishments, and it's approximately, at the time that they thought about that, 44 cubic yards per linear foot. If the county or the legal department or whoever you assign this to attempts to get easements on any lot from 50 feet up to 2.3 miles, like for Hammock Dunes, and you don't have some description of the process that the county will go through to attempt to give them a maintenance idea on their property, there's no basis for anyone to sign a perpetual easement. So when you make the choice to put the perpetual easements front end rather than after a beach management plan, because nature does not give us the time to go through a beach management plan step-by-step process, all of these slides, and just click through them, that you'll see, this is the condition. There's no dune up at the right-hand slide. That's breached at that area. That will be repaired by 6 cubic feet, but go ahead. That elevation is 10 foot at that location is the top of the dune. The next storm that comes down, that will reduce to 7 foot. Just for a reference point, Summer Haven is at 6 foot. Summer Haven, if you have a 6-foot sandbar out there, this can be taken down there to one storm at R36. So that's the time pressure. It's not Hammock Dunes coming. Commissioner Hanson asked us to switch to a perpetual easement from a project easement, and we created the architecture to be able to do that. Keep going, I'll tell you, keep going. This is from Olson Engineering. The green line, if you see there, you see off to the left, a 14-foot dune crest, 12-foot dune crest. Look at those. That green line, the only low elevation that existed in the county was to the north. That has now come down to R41. And at R38, the one that I just showed you, it's down below 12 foot. That will move down below south of Vaughan Park with the next storm, even if you put the 6 cubic yards there. If we take 3 or 4 or 5 years to do a beach management plan rather than collect these perpetual easements from a front-end standpoint, and you cannot have 1-page easements without a 2,000-page beach management plan or adopting alternative 6 from the beach management study. So while we're being accused of sneaking in alternative 6 or this process, we're not trying to sneak anything. We're trying to get a legal definition sufficient enough that somebody could sign off on a perpetual easement anywhere in the northern 12 miles. At the end of this presentation, we have rebuttals to every one of the process. We came and we'd still like someone to make a motion to approve this this perpetual easement. We think it's strong. We're willing to amend it if you don't like it. But the idea of aborting this process 4 months into the process, it's incredible. So.
Commissioner Hanson, or Chair Hanson, also Dave Condit. Dave Condit is one of our volunteer attorneys, and he has impeccable qualifications as an attorney. And I'd like Dave, Dave, if you could please stand up and make a couple comments, please.
Thank you. I just want to talk a little bit about, first of all, the workshop. We had a workshop at the end of which, as Mr. O'Brien indicated, there was, from our point of view, a very clear direction from the board to get this document into shape to present to you today. And we then talked with the assistant counsel, Sean. He proposed certain language which he understood and we understood to be in conformity with your mandate to get this document in shape. He asked for certain amendments to the document. We agreed to them, and that is the document which is before you now. This thing has been wordsmithed to death. We have had 4 or 5 goings back and forth. That's not unusual. I've been an attorney for 40 years. This is normally how things happen. This is what happens. So the process here is not so overwhelmingly confusing and unusual. On the contrary, it is the normal process for resolving and coming to an agreement on what is admittedly a complex situation, but this document does that. Also, this document can be amended. It is not cast in stone. The parties can adjust it as the process goes forward, pursuant to their own negotiations and agreements. It's very difficult to now stop this process when we have a beach that is dying. It is on life support. And all you have to do is walk it and see it. Commissioner Hanson, you mentioned that there are, I forget the exact number, a number of rental properties on the beach in Flagler County, which bring in, I don't know, 6, 10, whatever the figure was, millions of dollars. Those are at risk right now. There aren't going to be any rental properties if you don't have a beach. And we cannot afford, and I say this as a resident, we cannot afford to put this process along the same sequential process that resulted in Flagler Beach, and where we still don't have the easements that are necessary. We have got to get on the schedule for the 2024 dredge project that was described to you this morning by the Army Corps of Engineer representative. It has to happen now. This document, it includes all of the language requested by Mr. Hadid and his staff to protect the county from financial liability. You cannot be, under the terms of the document, you are not subject to liability unless you agree to it. And moreover, this is not something which prevents or imposes financial liability upon the county, but rather it is a necessary conduit of funds so that we can, so that you can receive funds from from the state and the federal entities in order to fix the beach in our particular area. So this is it. You're at the point where you have to say, if not this board, who? And if not now, when? Thank you.
Thank you all.
And I want to thank you, too, for the opportunity, and also, too, that, and I'll just give you one more blunt comment. Sean, I think you're a good attorney. I really do. I think you're a good attorney. I think it's good staff. I think it's a shame that you got thrown under the bus. I think that's unbelievable.
Thank you.
Well, any other comments?
From the public.
Any other public comment? Anybody wish to speak?
James Fisk with the Flagler County Historical Society on this portion of it. This is very minor, but it involves a historic road that's in that area. Concerning the staging area, how is that going to affect the Coast Guard Road? Mr. Hadid and I have been working for a very long time, which unfortunately, because of easement problems, he hasn't been able to help out very much what he can. I give him a lot of credit for that. But we're trying to get it on the National Register of Historic Places right now. And if we allow the staging area to incorporate part of this road, you may as well kiss it goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. Seeing no one else approach, I'll bring it back to the commission. Commissioners.
I've got to just, I mean, just in response to some of the comments, I don't think anybody's denied the importance of the perpetual easement and its the need for it for multiple reasons. The fact that we are waiting on it to even do emergency sand, magnifies the importance of getting something ironed out, because that seems to me to be first and foremost of importance and a stopgap measurement. And I understand the situation that you guys have put into. I apologize mainly because of the confusion of having this on today's agenda. I just think there's too many things that have been thrown out today that I can't agree to something today. And I know you don't want to see it pushed to another meeting, but I can't approve this without having staff spend more time on it. And within getting it on the next agenda is the best I think that we can do. I think it would fall on all of us to do whatever we can, spend whatever time we can with staff to make sure that we get all of our questions answered in advance. The dais isn't the time to do that. You get all that work done in advance. My questions to today were under the thinking that our board was going to potentially wait on Commissioner Sullivan, who is the commissioner of a large section of the beach, and he would be back in 2 weeks as well. But I think you've clearly demonstrated the need for the easement. From my standpoint, too many questions have been thrown for me to approve anything today. I would need additional time, and I think 2 weeks is sufficient.
Mr. Chair, I have to respectfully disagree with one thing Mr. Dance said about we do not have. I would offer a motion that we approve this document, and with the caveat that staff immediately continue negotiations for amendments to it, and I'm hoping that the Hammock Dunes folks would be amenable to that. And obviously I can't add a specific time frame to that, but I think the approach of getting the document on the board and then working through Mr. Hadid's concerns and staff's concerns to amend it going forward is a reasonable approach. So that's the motion.
Second. It's been moved and seconded to approve item 8A, with the caveat that Mr. Hadid continue to work with Hammock Dunes to amend the document as the two parties see fit.
Can I just have one other
Yes,
piece in the discussion? I too think Mr. Moylan and Mr. Ardid are good attorneys, great attorneys, and I'm proud that they serve with us and represent us, but there definitely was frustration in this process. So anyway.
It's moved and seconded to approve item 8A with the caveat about amendments. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed say nay.
Nay. I can't approve a contract. I don't know the language. I'm sorry. Good intentions, but I can't do it.
So
the motion fails.
Go ahead, sorry. I'm confused. I'm sorry, you're moving. Okay, you're moving on.
Next up, item 9A, Possum Lane.
Before everybody leaves, I need clarification on how this will be brought back based on the vote, because I need.
Well, there's still a couple points that Al has that they have to reach agreement on.
Right, but a tie vote fails, so how does this come back to the commission, Mr. Hadid? I mean, we didn't think this through very clearly.
No.
Without Mr. Sullivan here.
First off, this is testing. Okay. I'm sure you all know that I fully appreciate the urgency, critical nature, importance of this. So we would attend to getting back with them on these issues and any others that
So this version of the contract
administration-
failed, but is
Right.
the door still open for a modified version of this to come back to us in 2 weeks?
I would not interpret the board's action as relieving me from further attention to this, again, because I said it is, I believe, this labor is critically important.
But do you need a motion to bring this
Yeah.
back in a modified version to
No.
be? No?
Well, I do think
Okay.
that we
I mean, you can direct one, but I do
like
not
to.
need it.
I think that would be inappropriate because it's not on the agenda. It's not part of our adopted agenda.
No, you're true. That's a very good point. I just
I
want to
think
make
it's
sure
clear
that there's
that our-
direction to move forward.
I think it's clear that our intention is to move forward, and I think that's very clear, and that Al needs to sit down with the Hammock Dunes folks and get this resolved. And I'm serious, you should get this done in 4 or 5 days. My reading of it is, there's not much of a hurdle to get over, to get this approved.
So there's consensus to put it on the next
Next
agenda.
agenda.
Next agenda.
Next agenda.
It's just that this version, this language failed.
And I would add, if it's so critical to you, there was 3 weeks, we could have had something, a good version to pass here today. So when it comes back on the agenda, the next agenda, it needs to be cleaned up and agreed with the Hammock group. I want to try to move forward with this for them. So the consensus
Okay,
is to come back.
Consensus is get back to work. All right. Public hearings, item 9A, Possum Lane, also known as County 14, vesting, abandonment, adjacent land acquisition, including adoption of a resolution to designate by map that the ownership and maintenance in Possum Lane, County Road 14 is vested in Flagler County. And I'll suspend the reading of the whole thing. So I read this, and it's the issue that we brought up 2 meetings ago. And this, what you're trying to do is clarify that, is kind of put some ownership on some of that, so that where the road turns left, where it was intended to go straight, now it turns left. And we're codifying that, is what we're doing. Correct?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Adam Engel, Growth Management Director. And so from February 20th, if you recall, when we were there, we had a couple of issues that came up representing from the party that had advanced this. And so what we thought of as staff, I think we discussed this some, was the idea that maybe there was some equity that we could add to the discussion where we could offer then an abandonment of a portion of Possum, the part that shows up on that St. John's Development Company plat, then the 15 feet on each side of the center line along the section, that part where we will never build a road that runs east from where we're having our vesting determination, our map that we had given you before, from that easternmost point of that, then to the portion of the abandoned railroad right-of-way, that we could offer that to the landowner then on both sides. They would then have a contiguous parcel. And it seemed to create some equity to our taking, if you will. Again, realizing the statute isn't set up that way, gives us the ability to do what we intended to do all along with the vesting, as I refer to it in the map. The adoption of the map, we could do that all along. We don't have to link this to the abandonment and the vacation of that part of a paper street, that there is no roadway within that. We don't have any intent of putting anything there. We figured it was a good gesture, if nothing else. Yeah. And then the third part that I added into this, as we were going through this, is there was the segment of Whistle Stop Farms that we realized, Tract A, dedicated on the plat, but still showing up in the ownership of the developer, dedicated to the county. And talking with the developer briefly, she had relayed that I couldn't get any title on it because your road's there. Part of what we already know, a Possum Lane passes through it, and so that the dedication part was there, and so that what we had put in also was a special warranty deed for consideration with this. So we went from a single vesting item, adoption of the map by resolution, then to add two other portions to this since the February 20th meeting, the part then that's about the vacation and abandonment of the portion to the east. You'll see it here in this map, and then also then the acquisition then, hopefully through special warranty deed from the developer at Whistle Stop Farms, recognizing the plat dedication to the county. So this is the language we were working under in the statute. Won't read that, but this is the part that enables us to do the map that we talked about, the vesting map. Continues on and has it where it's a map signed by the chair and the clerk attesting to this is the boundary effectively of County Road 14, what we've always maintained. And what we had submitted to you on February 20th, that map has stayed the same. Here's that map. And then since then, here's that portion I've talked about that would be the vacation and abandonment. And so we set up a second resolution to accomplish this. And so that's in your packet. And through this action, you would not only have that vesting through the map, that approval of that resolution, but then also approval of the resolution for this vacation and abandonment. The owner then on both sides is the same. They would then own a contiguous piece of property along the north with the frontage along County Road 13, and then to the south. And then these two parts, I wanted to include this in here because this hopefully gives you a better idea of the geography. Again, our map itself, we're getting a portion of this triangle there, and this is Tract A in red from the Whistle Stop Farms plat, already dedicated to the county, but currently showing up in the public records as within the ownership of the developer. That blue portion that you're seeing, that is a remnant piece that is owned by the city of Bunnell. We're not approaching that right now. Our road certainly would fall within some of that. Representation is present with Ms. Fisher from the city of Bunnell. Again, we're intending for them to keep that and don't have any reason for them to do anything different. We did talk about easements, utility easements that are there. There is water and sewer lines that are generally within our portion of our identified roadway that we would adopt here. We don't have any difficulty with those being in there, but where that varies, where those lines may move out of this boundary and not within the blue or the red here, there would be a reason for an easement to be granted by the adjacent landowners for those utility lines. We understand that's still needed by the owner of the gun range. We don't want to complicate this agenda item. That's something for them to work out with the city of Bunnell. And so with that, our recommendation, bringing this forward from the 20th, and we think we've satisfied then all the parties with this, but it would be the approval of the resolution vesting the county's ownership and maintenance in that portion of Possum Lane, County Road 14, adopt that resolution vacating the portion of Possum Lane that we've identified easterly, then running to that portion of the vacated Florida East Coast, Bunnell to Palatka Railroad right-of-way, and then accept the special warranty deed for Tract A and Whistle Stop Farms subdivision. And knowing that that special warranty deed may not come for some time, we had some discussions with that developer in Whistle Stop Farms. They were then looking for some compensation from the county. We're not compelled to do that. It's dedicated on the plat. That may come, that may not. But we are at least offering that to be able to correct the public record and be able to have that showing up in the county's ownership. With that, I'll close, await any questions or comments. I know there's some parties here that are represented. They're eager to speak about this as well.
But there's no question that we own a Possum Lane, right? There's no question about it.
I think that's, in part of what, I mean, we had a county road designated there, County Road 14, and so part of that was kind of not in question all along, but there have been some debate. And so this process in the statute is set up just to quiet that. I'm referring to it as vesting. That's probably inartful, but it is the statutory process for us to say, this is what we've historically maintained. These are the limits that we'll recognize. This becomes the county road.
Right. Commissioners, any questions?
I don't have any.
Well, I entertain a motion to approve 9A.
Motion to approve item 9A.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve 9A. Open up to public comment. Anybody in the public wish to comment on item 9A? Possum Lane, County Road 14.
Good afternoon now, Commissioners. Vincent Sullivan. I was here before you last time on behalf of the property owners of the gun range. I just wanted to take an opportunity to say thank you on behalf of the property owners. During the time from our last meeting to this meeting, the county attorney and county staff and I have been working together to come up with this resolution. I believe the only outstanding matter that we still have is that we still have the map that where Possum sits today. There's still a mortgage that covers that portion of the property. We haven't been able to get that mortgage released from that portion. We're hoping that we can do the exchange. By the vacation of the paper right-of-way that we're contemplating today, we're hoping that'll be enough to entice the mortgage company. I just wanted to bring that up for you board members just in case, heaven forbid something comes down the line, my clients get in a car accident on the way home and they can't make the mortgage payment, the county could foresee that lawsuit coming down the line. Again, slim possibility, but I wanted you all to be aware of it. And I wanted you all to know that your staff is awesome. They've worked with us throughout the entirety, and I appreciate you guys and gals giving us the opportunity to work with staff to come with a resolution that works for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. Seeing no one approach, I'll bring it back to the commission for a vote. All in favor of approving 9A, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Hearing none, the motion passes. Item 9B, legislative, request for approval on first reading of an ordinance amending chapters 8 and 9 of Flagler County Code of Ordinances related to the building code and code enforcement. Adam.
Thank you, sir. So this one follows the April 3rd board workshop, and we were trying again in this ordinance to accomplish several things. I'll hit on each one of these here, and then I'll go more specifically on each of these topics in the next slides. And so probably the most critical aspect that we had, most time sensitive, was the legislation that was passed back in 2021, House Bill 735, and a July 1st, 2023 effective date that affected specialty contractors. It was a preemption in the legislation that took away specialty contractor licenses for the most part, and local licensing specifically as it relates to those. And so we had that in our mind. We also saw that while we were at this, there was some language that we had that was some old references back to even the 2001 Florida Building Code and our Code of Ordinances, where we had adopted the original adoption of the Florida Building Code. We moved from the Southern Building Code, Congress International, the SBCCI, or the Standard Building Code is how we referred to it, to the Florida Building Code. We wanted to clean that up. While we were at it, we had some discussions as staff about the International Property Maintenance Code. And then this being something that we were interested in, we've talked about it several times before, and I'll hit on that again in greater detail here in just a few minutes. Adding a special magistrate as an option in our code enforcement was also something we wanted to do with this. And so quite a bit that we're trying to take on with this ordinance. And then the final piece there at the bottom, we had done public notice for this for the May 15th meeting, thinking that what we would have is that July 1st, we wanted to have ideally about 30 days for folks to know about this coming through, how our order through, we were tracking them on Friday. They look to be they're gonna move forward, and more beneficial for those trades is that that legislation that's running through right now is going to give some specificity to the DBPR and how Department of Business and Professional Regulation, how those trades will be managed at the state level. Some information that's lacking right now, but is running through those bills. And so we're crossing our fingers hoping that's going to happen. So again, the 2021 House bill, specific statutes related to contractor licensing were amended there. Most part, it eliminated specialty contractors, preempted local licensing, but it didn't include that specific agency guidance. And so that's one of the things that we thought was a deficiency here. And what really is happening now is a cleanup of that, is what I believe. The 2 years were out there for contractors to seek something different than a local license. Some of them did so. Some of them became general contractors in order to continue to be able to have a viable business. And then the session right now has those bills running through. Most part, those are going to be July 1st, 2024. So you'll see in the recommendation, we want you, if you do approve this on first reading, you'll have the second reading then move to June 19th, 2023, or June 19th meeting at 5:30 or as soon thereafter as the matter may be heard.
Can I ask a question, Mr. Chair, of Adam?
Go ahead.
So if those two bills, it's my understanding that the House bill passed already.
Yes, I
And
think
the
so.
Senate bill is going to be discussed tomorrow. That's what I understand. So let's just say that they both pass and the governor signs them, or signs it. So do we need to amend the ordinance language, and can we do that by second reading, or do we have to redo the process?
We believe we're good, and in previous iterations of ordinances that we've done, part of what we wanted to do with this by doing two readings also was give sufficient notice and give us the opportunity to do this. That we can always take away parts from an ordinance, we can't add to them. So our notice was inclusive of this language. We have that very large section in there that has this amending portion to our local code of ordinances that comports with the statute. But if that date's extended, you hit on just where we're going to head. We're going to cut all that out. The ultimate ordinance that you'll see then will miss that, will lack that specific contractor language. What we'll do then over the next 8-10 months is track that at the state level and then come back with an amendment specific to that chapter in the code of ordinances that's going to comport with the eventual statute and the guidance from DBPR. So what we would do in between, if this heads like we think it's going to head, main thing we want to do is make sure we met the July 1st, 2023 deadline, if that's there. But assuming the governor signs it, we're going to take all that out. June 19th, you'll see a truncated ordinance.
Because if we don't do that, then it doesn't get passed, then all those specialty contractors are in peril in terms of pulling permits and that kind of stuff, right?
Yes, sir. And so then the Florida Building Code piece that we had here, realizing the Florida Building Code's amended every 3 years. The code amendment process for the Florida Building Code itself is a statewide process and invites review and comment from many parties. The version included in our ordinance, again, was for the most part the 2001. you really don't have to adopt the Florida Building Code per se, but ordinarily there's kind of a chapter, initial chapter that talks about how it works here locally. If you do amend it, you have to go through the Florida Building Commission for your local amendment. You can do that, but it is discouraged. And then right now, this ordinance, as it's crafted, will align with the most recent edition of the Florida Building Code, and we know we're going to have to come back for some amendments. There's one piece right now that's running through, it's the wind zone lines. Wind zone lines are presently being submitted to us in draft form. We know that when the building code is adopted and becomes effective, I think it's December 31st, but don't quote me, we'll have to bring back the wind zone lines because the new building code will require the new wind zone lines to be adopted. So we'll be coming back with at least that part for you to review and a model code. It does have that same kind of cycle of revisions that happen, but it is not part of the Florida Building Code. So when I contacted the state, they said you can go on and adopt that however you want. That's not considered a local amendment to the Florida Building Code. So if we choose to adopt this, it's something that we would keep up with just the same as we would with the Florida Building Code iterations, but it's not considered a local amendment to the Florida Building Code. You'll see the reference there, and I was surprised to know about this. After the Surfside condo collapse, there was a statewide review of how the codes are handling existing buildings, and specifically ICI and several others had gone through and looked at what different jurisdictions have on the books for these kind of regulations. And they found 83 jurisdictions in the state of Florida had adopted the IPMC. And it was advised through the article I was reading produced by ICC that jurisdictions would adopt the model because it would have this continued code cycle, this continued review that other local amendments wouldn't necessarily have. That code amendments will be needed in the future. We know that's going to happen. My statement there, and I think that's the reality of it, is that this will add an objective tool to your enforcement toolbox. And so I'm always worried, I don't want to have subjectivity, I want to have objectivity. I want to have something where it's not subject to debate. And I think you all share that goal, is that we want things to be clear. We want things to be where it's not something that's got a lot of gray. And I think the International Property Maintenance Code is one of those pieces that will help to take away some of that gray. Final item that I have is the one about special magistrate. This is permitted by Chapter 162 Florida statutes. The special magistrate would serve as the impartial hearing officer and will be appointed by the board, would serve on an as-needed basis, that we wouldn't necessarily have every code case going to the special magistrate. These would be those that, for whatever reason, have languished, that they haven't reacted to that initial notice, they haven't reacted to the citation process, then we would take them forward. I believe that it would also raise our game effectively, because the special master acts as a judge, that the county would present their side, the person facing the code enforcement action would present their side, and that special master then would then decide, hopefully in an equitable fashion, what the solution should be, and would put that into an order. So from my standpoint, it should give us another tool in the toolbox, but should also have us where we're providing maybe more evidence than what we had before, where we're then having to provide facts on the record in the face of a master, a special magistrate who's experienced with these cases and would then be able to adjudicate them. There was a question that came up, how does that work then if there's an appeal? That appeal does not come to the board as it's written, and as typically does happen, the special master's order is appealable to the circuit court. And so that's one part to at least acknowledge. I can tell you that St. Johns County has this set up in their rules. And so it's something adjacent counties have done. We still will have the Code Enforcement Board in our code. We haven't taken advantage of that so far, but you'd still have that available to you, that if, for whatever reason, you wanted to institute a Code Enforcement Board, we haven't deleted that out of the code. That's still there. This, again, is another option for us, but one I think that would help to modernize our processes and hopefully make it where it's more fairer.
Excuse me, Adam, I'm sorry to interrupt. Adam, I see something in your outline that I really was not aware of. We already have provisions in our code concerning special magistrate, and they are retained by the county attorney's office.
Yes, sir.
So you've got there that it's going to be appointed by the board. I'm worried that if we do that, we're going to fall under the dual office holding problem of being able to get anyone to be able to do the job. So, I mean, is that required that it be appointed by the board?
Others have done it that way. St. John's has done it that way, and that's actually one of the problems we're having right now, that we've talked about this. And so part of the problem we're having, where we were wondering, let's see how readily available special masters are. We're not having a good time finding someone who's available. So
I'm going to suggest, unless the board has a really strong preference on this, and I'm happy to address it further, that the special magistrate being appointed by the board, that we remove that. We already have it addressed in our code, that it's handled through our office. Basically, it's hiring an attorney. If we make it a position, oops, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. If we make it a position, it might be subject to dual office holding. You're not allowed to have dual offices. You're aware of that, right? The governor can also be a county commissioner. I mean, I'm just using a crazy example. So if we elevate it to that status, it may create problems in getting people to serve as special magistrate.
And I think I could probably answer to the board that our ordinance doesn't prescribe, I believe, it doesn't say overtly that it's appointed by the board. I just figured that St. John's did it. They also have a contractual, they have a contracted special magistrate that they have in St. John's County. I just figured in one way or the other, you're going to be approving the contract. I was trying to get at more the idea that you'd have some control over the magistrate, but if as we're talking about it, and it is difficult to find someone right now who's qualified, if we could have just anybody we could find right now who has that experience, who could serve in that capacity. I don't care about the mechanics as long as we can get somebody who can serve in that role if you ultimately approve this. With that, I close with the options, and certainly I'd put the caveat in there that the approval would be effectively with that condition that if we come through the legislature, the legislative session that we're currently under, and that July 1st, 2024 date takes effect, the ordinance that you will see will be the ordinance without the portion on the contractor licensing. You will not have to effectively provide that in your motion. We will bring it forward. We're not going to adopt something that won't conform to Florida statutes. And so we'll bring that forward to you. If that change happens, that's our reason for the June 19th date. With that, I'll close. Wait, any questions or comments? Thank you all.
Well, did we make a decision on the special magistrate? We want to leave it?
I don't think it's in the ordinance. I think I was just guessing through my presentation. I don't remember it being in the ordinance itself. If you just want to say it.
It was confirmed by Sean that it is? It is in the ordinance. It is in the ordinance. It is in the draft ordinance. It is, in other words, it would be a new requirement. It would be a different requirement than what we've done before. We've had special magistrates in our history.
Do you appoint the special magistrates for the value-added board?
No, we say that?
Do you appoint the magistrates for the value-added board?
No, we're not permitted to do that. Remember, we're sealed off from the value adjustment board.
So they do it themselves?
They do it themselves.
Okay, right. Yes, Andy?
Explain the process now if somebody is not complying with a code enforcement order, they just ignore it, and it's not something to send the sheriff on.
We don't use, I'm sorry, just to make sure, we do not use a code enforcement board. It's provided in our rules, we don't have one.
Right. So I'm trying to find out, how are those resolved if somebody ignores a code enforcement order?
They receive a civil citation, and then within the timeframes that we can issue another civil citation to them, we would do so. And whether they pay the civil citation or not is kind of at their discretion. Some pay, some do not. And that if they fail to pay, there's a collection process that we understand the clerk of court runs through, but there's not a lot of an incentive right now for compliance.
It's treated, actually, technically, the code enforcement fine under the civil citation system is actually treated as a fine, just as if it were levied in the court, and therefore it's subject to the judicial process of collecting those fines. We did have a gap in our ability to collect, but that has now been corrected. We also have the choice of being able to go to the county court judge, and we've done that on a number of occasions.
So how is that, just, look, I'm familiar with the process, so I'm just trying to figure out if somebody ignores it, at what point does that trigger the civil citation? Somebody has to.
The statute prescribes a procedure. Unless there's danger to life and limb, you have to give them a period of time within which to come into compliance, and then if they don't, and that's a warning notice. That's not a civil citation. If they fail to do so, then the officer has the ability to issue a citation, and then they have X number of days to either pay the fine or to ask for court hearing to say, no, I didn't really violate that rule, or that rule is unconstitutional, or whatever they might do. And if they do, we take that to court. If not, the fine automatic, in other words, like a no contest. If you don't act within the time period to request a hearing, that fine is levied, and it goes on the books in the court proceedings and part of the collection process of the judiciary, of the clerk's office, actually.
Process automated so that or does the code, is it automated, or does the code enforcement officer manually process them?
That I'd have to leave to Adam.
Violations are manually processed, and so that there's a reinspection schedule. The tickler effectively in our software, well, they'll go back and they'll do another inspection. The violation is found to exist again, then they will generate yet another iteration of a citation.
So, and I'm sorry for the.
Well, I'm just, you're going down the right road here, but so is our ordinance changing that? So we go to a special magistrate instead of
That's
going
what I
to
was
court?
wondering, if there's costs involved that we don't have to deal with now by paying a special magistrate, or do we reinstate the code enforcement board?
To my knowledge, at least during my tenure, we have not had a code enforcement board. And the special magistrate, the thought there would be that through the fines that the special magistrate would end up placing on the order, would fund, at least in fairly large part, the activity of the special magistrate. Not to create that direct alignment. That's not our goal. Our goal is compliance, but that is something that right now is lacking. It's an issue for us.
So the special magistrate would be in lieu of going to court?
Yes, it would, yes. And as Mr. Adid had said, we've had probably a handful that have gone to court, and that's reserved for those that are, I'd say they're exceptional, or at the option of the person receiving the notice. They can certainly opt to that. That's out there. There's always also that proverbial injunctive relief. That's a high bar. We haven't headed there yet. We do also work with other agencies, so I can point out a couple of examples there. But there's every possible angle that we can. We've been using. So some joint action with the sheriff's office, with other agencies like FDOT, we've been able to attain compliance with that. So that if this doesn't happen, this isn't the end for us. It's just a chance for us to come up with maybe some other alternatives, and we'd be happy to certainly explore those if there are other options. I wanted to point out to you, page 35 does talk at section 9-12, board may appoint a special magistrate, term of office shall be 2 years. We were very specific in the board appointing, so.
Important if we can find them. It doesn't make any sense to add that in there if we're going to have.
That's right.
If it's impossible to find
Point,
people.
contract, whatever the difference, I could care less, but if we can't find them, then one way or the other, we have a problem. And right now, the dual office holding is our problem.
What's the other solution? Is there?
Right.
So do we need to take that out?
I think Mr. Deed's saying yes, that
Take out any references that it's an office, that it's a term of office, that it's subject to board appointment. I assume that if we struck that, we still could use special magistrates,
yes.
right?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think, okay. And so it just
we want the ability to use one, but not to straitjacket our efforts in procuring one.
It'd just be a contractual arrangement between county attorney's office purchasing.
Okay.
So you're going to take that out?
We can do that. Yeah, we can do that. And I believe that also fits in with something we can do between now and second reading. You don't have to delay the first reading if you'd like to continue as we are.
Any other comments, commissioners? All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve 9B.
9B, I'll make a motion to approve 9B on first reading.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve 9B. I'll open it up for public comment.
Discussion on that.
In
motion?
discussion? Yeah.
So do we need to add in the additional language about the second reading not being
Magistrate.
until June the 19th? Or, no?
No?
Okay.
Okay.
Should, you want me to add the as
Well,
amended
I'm
for
only
the
asking-
magistrate? Okay, so I'll amend the motion to include the striking the magistrate as appointed by the commission.
Yeah.
And noting that the second reading is June 19th.
Second.
All right. Moved and seconded to approve 9B. Now to open to public comment. Anybody in the public wish to comment on 9B? Seeing no one approach, I'll bring it back to the board. All in favor of approving 9B signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Hearing none, the motion passes. County Administrator, your report, please.
I just have a few things. As you know, we're continuing to work on our tentative budget for fiscal year '24. Internally, we have and are continuing to meet with departments, evaluating their needs, adjusting for contractual increases, and analyzing the changes that are being proposed or approved by our FRS. That wrapped up over the weekend. We haven't actually seen what that looks like yet as far as dollars, but we're going to be paying attention to that. We are updating our capital improvement plans. I know some of you would like to see those. They're not available yet. We're continuing to update some of the pricing. We have a list of what those improvements are, but it's just fine-tuning the dollar amounts for those. And today, our constitutional officers' budgets are due to us, being that it's May 1st. So as we start to pull all of that information together, we'll start to get a better idea of what that financial picture looks like. I do have a series of additional meetings with staff during the month of May. On June 1st, our property appraiser will provide a preliminary estimate on our property tax values. On June 5th, we're scheduled for a budget workshop to discuss the draft general fund budget. This will be your first look at the information being requested. We'll send that out to you ahead of, but that is the date that we are looking to meet publicly. Last week, we held our first annual Bring Your Kid to Work Day. This is a national event that's held annually in April on the fourth Thursday of the month. For the event, we partnered with all of our constitutional officers with the theme for the event being Working Better Together. The event was a huge success. We had approximately 120 children that participated that day. It was a great way for us to introduce our youth into county government and start building our future leaders. We had received some great feedback, and we look forward to sharing some footage of the event, hopefully at your next board meeting. We're pulling together some video and pictures to share with the public and you as well. And just to share a few other things that we're working on, we are updating our interlocal agreement with the tax collector's office. That's for our residential solid waste assessment, along with updating our solid waste ordinance and our towing ordinance. The towing ordinance is something that hasn't been updated in, I think it was like 6 years, along with some of the costs associated with that. So we're updating that. We're also working with our city partners. We have a interlocal agreement with Bunnell for permitting, and also providing City of Palm Coast with a fiber optic cable easement. And then there is a small section of homes that actually annexed into the City of Bunnell that are desiring to receive county garbage service. So we are also working on a interlocal with them to be able to collect those and put those onto the assessment roll as well. And all of these items are going to be brought back before you for your consideration over the next few months. So some of those we have already drafted. Some are being heard in the City of Bunnell ahead of coming to you. So just some things that we're working on. And that's it. That concludes my report.
Did I read correctly that our fear of the the big charge that FRS was going to put on us, that got reduced?
It
I
did
read
get
that right?
reduced. It did. I just don't know. I don't know the final dollar amount, but it's significantly less.
Significantly less, yeah,
It
that's the
is.
way I read it, yeah. Okay, well, that's good news.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And then I forwarded an email to you as far as our legislative appropriations right now. They all seem to be intact, and hopefully that'll be finalized. The only one that increased is the conservation land money. It actually increased from what we had asked for to what they're looking to give us. So I forwarded an email that we had received from our lobbyist while I was here, so
And that,
it's good news.
That answers Mr. Fisk's question from earlier about wildlife corridor lands. That was a priority of Speaker Renner, and
Right.
that's what we have as a legislative ask, so.
That's correct.
Yeah, and we'll get that, I think. So. Okay, Mr. Adid?
No report.
No report. It's now for our second community outreach. This 30-minute time period has been allocated for public comment for items not of the agenda. Each speaker will be allowed up to 3 minutes to address the commission. Speakers should approach the podium, identify themselves, and direct comments to the chair. Yes, Richard.
Good morning. Richard Hamilton, resident of Flagler County and Island Estates, which is technically part of Hammock Dunes. I was prepared to comment on certain items on the agenda, but you all made the right decision, so I didn't have to say anything. But I would be remiss if I didn't get one thing off my conscience. And that is just a little statement that I have been impressed in the 20 years I have lived here with the quality of your current staff. And Mr. Hadid, Ms. Petito, Adam, and others, that you have a great staff that deserves our support and our belief. I wish I could say the same of my colleagues from Hammock Dunes, but you've got to recognize that they had and have a three-part agenda, only one of which is giving you the easement we need to keep going on. And therefore, I just wanted to express that personal support of one resident in Hammock Dunes for your county staff. And if they have concerns, they have it for your interests, not for their own personal interests. So I just wanted to make that comment and got your lunch.
That's a very good point. Thank you. Next speaker. Seeing no one else approach, I'll bring it back to the commission. Commissioners, any reports, comments, or action? Mr. Dance.
I just want to, on the thanking staff note, and our constitutionals, the Taking Kid to Work Day was awesome.
It was.
At first of many, right? But it was a lot. It was great. I wish I kind of, well, no, I don't, but it was nice to see the kids having a good time. And really, the only other thing, there's so many things going on. I took time to walk around town center for the Small Business Expo, so I want to thank the chamber for putting that on, because our small businesses need that exposure and support. And chatting with probably 80%, 70% of them walking around the circle, they were definitely glad to be able to have that opportunity and to speak to people. It's a great. Luckily, the rain held off, so it was a great weather as well. But just as a plug that we support and buy local and support our local businesses, and as a commission, we continue to do what we can to support local. I know we're always looking to bring in new entities, but we have to continue to support our local businesses too.
Yeah, something that I enjoy doing is going to those grand openings of those small businesses, and I always tell them that that's they should be proud of themselves, because that's a big move to put your whole life's savings and everything into a little small business, and small business just drives our county right now.
Our backbone.
Yeah, it's our backbone. Ms. Pennington.
I don't have any comments this time.
All right, Mr. O'Brien.
Echo Commissioner Dance's comments on Bringing Child to Work Day and the participation with all the constitutionals. I can tell you my two granddaughters that participated, had a great time, learned a lot, petted an alligator. Lots of other things, but thank you for that. And then just one other thing, I just wanted to thank Amy for spending time with me. It's been a while since I've really focused on TDC and the process and the funds collection and you know, all our buckets and things like that. And she was gracious enough to spend some time with me last week to brief me, get me up to date on things, and I appreciate that. So.
I had the opportunity to judge the 4th and 5th grade speech contest, which was, Commissioner Dance was there with me, but that was really a well-spent evening. That was pretty cool. They're pretty amazing kids.
Got to speed up the judging.
Yeah. I came out after judging, and Andy grabs me and he says, "That took too long." We tried to get it right. So Miss Cody was one of the judges. That was cool. Pat Cody. It was pretty cool. Just a thank you to Jorge. That presentation was very good today. I learned a lot. That was good. That was good. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
We are adjourned.